Hello, this is Jason Bosch, and this is another episode of If We Were Honest. And I wanted to do a quick intro to this video because this interview I did with Brandi Ann was actually taken from two different interviews, and I kind of spliced it together. So there's a lot of good, interesting conversation that happened, but if it seems a little just disjointed at points, that's why, because I was trying to piece it together and make it flow. But I only, had so much time to spend on it. And but it's almost 4 hours of content. But hopefully it makes sense. And so if it feels a little disjointed, that's why. Thanks. Hi, everyone. This is Jason Bosch. I am here with a good friend of mine, Brandi. And I know Brandi, we both connected through, actually through Facebook, but we connected through the work of Alison McDowell and Brandi. Hey, Brandi, how you doing?
Hi.
First of all, how did you first... Oh wait, we got a visitor here. That's fine.
It always does this.
Is that the giant cat that I see?
That's Remus.
Nice. So we connected through the work of Alison McDowell, and you'd been following her work as well. How did you first come across her work?
So I actually came across her work through your channel, and so I was researching a lot of different things with AI, and I was looking over the fourth industrial revolution, and I seen a video of her that was on your channel, and then I had seen one with Lynn Davenport and Julianne, and after that I connected with her through Facebook, and I connected with you and everybody like that. So it was actually through your channel that I had found her.
Oh, excellent. I think I did remember that. That's great.
Yeah.
So somebody's watching. That's good.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
So, and you're down in Florida, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
South Florida.
Yeah. And so I was interested in bringing you on the show because you have some interesting background and you do a lot of work around trafficking, correct?
Yes.
And how did you get involved with doing that?
So it's a long story, but basically years ago, back in like 2012, I think it was, I ended up getting trafficked. And so after that, I kind of just like, I just immediately knew what I wanted to do was help other people that went through that. I started talking with like different agencies and, trying to go through people that work at the state level and just basically going out there and talking to other people and other girls that went through it. And so that's where I started getting involved. And then I started researching like all about human trafficking. And so I found out, like the levels of who's involved and how far it goes. And it's kind of crazy because it always leads me back to like AI and human trafficking. Like they're kind of intertwined at this point, which is kind of like a bold statement to make, but it's kind of true. And so that's kind of how I fell into researching it, was basically through my own experience and stuff.
So how does AI connect with that?
So a lot of the people are involved with artificial intelligence, like Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell. Her sister works at the World Economic Forum, and then her father was like an Israel Mossad agent, and they ran a network. And I feel like a lot of those people, they kind of like warmed up to tech companies because they knew that was going to be a huge deal for the 4IR. And so I think he was trying to leverage certain people. Like he had a lot of investments with artificial intelligence and children's toys and a lot of like the surveillance toys that they were investing in. So it's like very intertwined. Like a lot of the same players are involved. And it just so happens that, Jeffrey Epstein just got, he was arrested and then he killed himself like a year ago. So it's just weird for me because I'm seeing both of them kind of interlap each other. And when I looked at Allison's work, I was looking at all the people and I was just like, oh my God, like I've seen these people, with the trafficking before, and now I'm seeing them here. So that's basically, it's a lot and it's really crazy. And
Yeah, I mean, the surveillance is a big piece of it. I think that, being able to, kids with their phones or their tablets or whatever, people don't think about that, but you're giving potential predators access, and people don't think about that when they give their kid an electronic device.
No, they don't.
So have you come across anyone that was actually a victim of Epstein, or in that circle, or is it mostly?
Yeah. So I talked to Maria Farmer, who she was the first person to report him to the FBI, and I think that was like 20 years ago almost, and they did nothing. Like she went, to the local police, and they were like, "Well, this is too big." So then she ended up going to the FBI, and they clearly didn't do anything because he kept doing this for another decade or two until he got caught down here in Palm Beach where I live. So that she cut, and it's a shame because the trial's going on right now with Ghislaine, and she already feels defeated. And I kind of, I didn't expect it to go anywhere, to be honest, because there's so many powerful people that are involved in it. Like, I really don't, I can't see them all falling, and that's, maybe I'm pessimistic, but in my opinion, they have way too much power, way too much money, and way too much influence. And, so it is what it is. But a lot of people don't realize that. Like, I don't think people understand that, we're run by a lot of people who are in the same circles as human traffickers, like Bill Clinton and, Epstein and all of their ties. I mean, he flew on Epstein's jet like 22 times, I think it was. And, these tech companies that are so powerful, they know there's a problem on their platform of trafficking, and they're completely aware of it. And sorry,
No, that's fine. What's the
and
cat's
so
name? What's this cat's
this
name?
is Remus.
Remus.
This is Remus.
Oh, Remus. He's cool. So go ahead.
But so yeah, there's I forget what the heck I was saying.
You were just talking about how powerful they are, and
Yeah.
you're skeptical that anyone's going to be really held to account.
I mean, for example, like the one lady over there that was working at ABC, I forget her name, but she knew about this story. I think it was like 4 years ago now, but she didn't put it out there because her bosses basically told her that, nobody cares, nobody knows who Epstein is. So what's the big deal? And, I mean, of course that's what his excuse was, but they're all connected, like Alan Dershowitz, like they don't want to talk about him. Les Wexner, who's a huge person involved in that, who owns Victoria's Secret, Abercrombie and Fitch, all of those stores, like they don't really bring him up either. And so now we're getting like sketches from them being in the courtroom, and you have to like dial in order to listen to it, and they're banning certain people from even entering the courtroom. So it's like, I have very little faith in our justice system, because even when it comes to my story, like they failed me and so many other people horribly. And so to me, it wouldn't be a surprise if, nothing really happened and she got some type of deal, and, everybody just forgets about it, which is horrible. But, I think that's what's going to happen. A lot of like how sex trafficking and AI overlaps is basically the same people that are doing AI are also like involved or been accused, like allegedly, of trafficking. And there was this guy that worked with the Sustainable Oceans Alliance, and he held a conference with Ghislaine Maxwell, and he was like joking when he said it, but he said, how are we going to own the oceans and, fix climate change? And so she created the Terramar Project, which was heavily funded by Epstein. Maggie Nixon was also in a picture with her, Ghislaine underwater, and President Obama actually was there. So everybody was like, funding this project. Basically, like, she was a deep water submersible pilot before this. So she was in submarines underwater, and she knew everything about it. And she was like really interested in fixing the ocean. And then you have people like Boris Nikolai. This is like unrelated to her, but there's another guy named Boris Nikolai, which he's now trying to set up, like he tried to set up a biotech investment fund with Jeffrey Epstein, Bill Gates, Melinda Gates, and J.P. Morgan, and which is with another guy who is the head of Moderna. He works with Moderna, which I thought was interesting. To make a mechanical record embedding vaccination information thing. So they want to take the information and I guess like, biotech and nanotech and everything like that. And so Epstein was heavily invested in that, and he funded like a lot of the science and health sectors. He was really into genomics, precognition, AI, machine learning, cognitive neuroscience, and a lot of the narratives that he used like played into the World Economic Forum and the Fourth Industrial Revolution, which is what Allison's work is like all about, basically. So Robert Langer helped form the Particles for Humanity, which received its initial funds from Bill Gates and J.P. Morgan in 2019. And Epstein also signed Nikolai, the guy that I was just talking about, into his will like the last few days before he died. So like, you know what I mean? Like these people are all connected, and Moderna right now, everybody's getting the Moderna shot. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. And then you've got the Clinton Foundation, who basically funds everything when it comes to sustainability and the World Economic Forum and the 4IR. But I found interesting, like back in, was it like 2016 when the whole QAnon thing came around and her name was like being thrown out there because of the emails. People like brushed it off because they thought it was like, like just a conspiracy theory. Like, well, I think they basically said like Comet Ping Pong doesn't have a basement. So the conspiracy theory is done with and that's it. But it really wasn't. Like if you looked into the people, like they're all connected. Like James Alefantis, who was the owner of Comet Ping Pong, hung around with like Democrat super lobbyists like Tony Podesta and John Podesta, and they were all hanging out, and they would go to his Comet Ping Pong place and have pizza or whatever, and they would have bands that would come and sing, and one of the bands was called like Sex Games or whatever, and they would make references to pedophilia in their music. And so like it's a conspiracy theory, but if you look into it, like you begin to see like why people are looking at it. And so another thing with the Clinton Foundation is, do you remember the disaster that happened with Haiti back then?
Yeah, of course.
When she came in and said she was going to fix things, and it was really like a huge money laundering scheme. Her friend Laura Silsby was caught trafficking 33 kids out of Haiti. And she took the kids, and they had parents, and the parents were like, what the hell is going on? Why are you taking my kids? And the authorities arrested her like they were supposed to. They actually arrested her. So Bill Clinton's lawyer, who was also convicted of child pedophilia, was the one to come and be her lawyer and bail her out of that entire situation. And so there's like another clear example of the two. And the Clinton Foundation funds basically everything right now that has to do with like sustainability, like I said. And then you have places like the Art of the Embassies, and I wrote that down because that was just crazy.
So what's that?
The Art of the Embassies it was born in 1953. It's just basically, it provides all the art for all the embassies around the world. It's an office within the U.S. State Department, and it promotes cultural diplomacy through exhibitions, permanent collections. But if you Google it, there's a picture of the ambassador, John Barry, and Curtis Yee, and the Foundation for the Art and Preservation in the Embassies, which is called FAPE, is a public-private partnership with the State Department dedicated to providing permanent works of art for the United States embassies worldwide. It seems like the central motive of the program is just having the ability to tightly control their shipments without passing through like security or like conventional means that like other people would have to pass through on the ocean. And the groups that are associated with that are probably like the most wealthiest and powerful people in the world. And some of them are actually linked to human trafficking, like the State Department, for example. There's allegations against some of the State Department officials claiming that they had interfered with criminal investigations, which they even quashed like some of the allegations completely. They just shut it down. Howard Gutman, who was in Belgium, he repeatedly traveled to overseas public parks and everything, and in search of prostitutes, and most of them were minors, and they completely quashed that out of the media. Other members included the Rockefeller family, which is, Rockefeller, they have plans for America in 2050 and the mega regions and everything. It just leads all the way back because they fund everything. The Estee Lauder family, Meryl Streep, the Democratic super lobbyists, and the owner of the child pedophilia art, Tony Podesta, who, I don't know if you've ever seen his artwork, but it's disgusting. It's really disturbing. It's like little kids, like some of them have like their hands like tied behind their backs, and some of them have like a older looking man laying down with like a baby in bed, and it's just like super disturbing and gross. And he also had like a bronze statue of like a girl who, there was a certain serial killer, like I always forget the name of him, but he used to like leave women in like certain positions when he was done. And so he had the same exact statue, and it looked exactly like the serial killer who, when he killed the girls, how he would leave them in these positions. And so it was just like really weird and creepy things that they're involved with. You know what I mean? And it kind of shows like through their artwork. And then you have Jeff Koons, who also collaborated with the art and embassies as well. And his previous wife was a Hungarian porn star who claimed that she was in fear for her life and that she was going to die and he would kill her. That she told the media that he was so rich and powerful that she had no chance, basically, and she was afraid that he would kill her if she said anything. But she allegedly said that, or she alleged that he had raped her, and when she came home again another day, he was lying naked, like with her baby in bed and like doing things to him. And so, I mean, these are like the people that are in our government. These are high level people that we never, like this whole Epstein thing's going on, but like we're not really talking about all of his connections and like what they're doing behind closed doors. Like we don't even bring this stuff up. And Jeff also served on the board of directors for the Missing and Exploited Children. So here's a guy who's allegedly raping his wife, fondling their baby, and he's also on the head of the Exploited and Missing Children's Network. Like, it's just mind-blowing. And then he also donated $50,000 to Correct the Record, which was also with David Brock, and that's the same Brock that also had relations with James Alefantis, and he backed Hillary Clinton a lot in her election. And so then you have Masterpiece International, which was funded by David Epstein, and that was a Manhattan-based cargo shipping company, and that specialized in shipping fine art. On their own site, it states that they are able to bypass strict security measures to conventional sites, from handling cargo to conducting both security and supervision. They also use their own custom brokers, which I thought was interesting. So like every step of the way, like they're promising that like you won't be able to see what's inside that package at all. And then Nicholas Negroponte, which is the brother of John Negroponte, owned the one laptop per child program. Did you ever hear of that?
Yeah, of course.
It's it reminds me of like, like when Allison talks about the data and how they want every child to have a laptop. I think that was like a UN thing, right? that
The UN supported it, but it was like you said, there was corporations involved, nonprofits. I can't remember who all was involved, but Allison talks about the Negroponte brothers in her last talk. So,
and that's like the crazy thing is like they're considered a nonprofit, you know, and they had the one laptop per child thing, and it was established with the goal of transforming education for children around the world. The goal is to be achieved by creating and distributing educational devices for the developing world, and by creating software and content for those devices. But after, you know, their sales were disappointing, they pretty much shut it down in 2014. So and they're connected to all of the other people that are doing odd things and trafficking, and a lot of it, you know, with sex trafficking. So I don't know, like, to me, I don't know if they're just moving art or if they're doing something else that's really shady, but I thought that was like really interesting, you know, because if you're talking about like shipping things and you don't want anybody to see what's in them, and then everybody around these groups are getting involved with sex trafficking, I'm not saying that they're shipping kids or anything, but you begin to see why somebody would look at that and be like, there's something going on there, you know? And it's just, there's a lot of weird connections, like with AI again. There's like overlaps. We've got another person who is called Nicole Junkerman. She was also on the Epstein flight log. She flown probably like 2 or 3 times, but she was one of the few people to ever fly alone on his airplane. Which, if you look at his flight logs, not a lot of people flew with just him. Like, he was always with groups of people. So I found it interesting that she was the only person that really flew with him by himself. And she was on the board of the NHS. I don't know if she still is, but she was in the UK for the Health Tech Advisory Board. And she was a technology expert. In 2005, she funded a private equity fund focused on the media and sports and called it United in Sports. She also was said to have a European private equity firm named Bridgeport. It was worth $60 million. And in 2011, she was named one of the hottest new investors. So she was pretty popular. She also had companies called Magnum Global Ventures, Sentient Technologies, Dollar Shave Club, and then Health Tech Digital. And she also was which is really interesting, she was reporting a Homeland Security thing, which would be pretty much like a precursor to Carbine 911 with Peter Thiel and all them. This was like the precursor to that. And it was called, Then she had Alkin and NJF Holdings. But the Health Tech Digital was a focus on nutrition through the eyes of an entrepreneur and investor, Nicole Junkerman. So besides founding NJF Holdings, which was also another venture capital company, she oversaw 30 startup companies involved in healthcare. So she's really involved in tech and healthcare. She said that she wanted to use artificial intelligence and machine learning to benefit health and wellness in the public. This is a girl who flew around with Jeffrey Epstein, a sex trafficker, and she wants to help make the public better. I just don't buy it. Alkin was an NJF capital portfolio company, which harnessed the power of AI for medical research to develop faster, safer, and more effective medicines and treatments for patients. So, you know, right now biotech is soaring in the stock market. And we have a company specifically created in at least the merging of technology and biology, built on beliefs that the medical research should be collaborative, inclusive, and have privacy, which I'm sure they care about privacy. And she was currently building a research and data entry. If you just Google Alkin and check out her site, you can, there's so much. She also closed an $11 million financing deal for AI and drug development. And again, it's a predictive analytics company. It uses transfer learning to accelerate drug discovery and development. It's led by OTM Venture and Nicole's venture company. It's in clinical development and medical research. So, behavior analytics again. If you think about like our mRNA technology and, how it's being created, it's tied into all of this. She also served on the board of directors since 2017. She played a significant role in the company's successful growth across Europe, and she has raised $75 million since 2018. Is at the forefront of innovation in the health tech sector. So, another venture capitalist, another one funding technology, just completely, it's crazy. And I've written, you've talked about it, Allison's talked about Palantir and Carbine, and this was pretty much like the precursor to that, her company. She was actually involved with building the Carbine in a way. But it's like really weird how she came about with that. She also has connections to Israeli intelligence and the military. And she was also involved with Harvard, just like Epstein and all the other ones are. So it was called Reporty Bridges, the gap between people and the resources needed to help them. So Reporty was the name. It was a first response company for public safety, and it was very similar to Carbine 911. It was using predictive data, predictive analytics, algorithms, etc. It also helped police pinpoint locations, and it gave them more information to be able to tell if you're like the perpetrator or the victim of the crime. They use the words real-time data, which is predictive analytics and predictive policing, which I found, like that's what they did with Black Lives Matter, right? They basically surveilled them from the sky and they could pinpoint the protesters, and then they ended up going to jail, and they thought, they were good, but they're not. And so these are the companies, that these people are building, and they're associated with the same circles who are allegedly trafficking children, just like CNN recently just had 2 people go down for pedophilia in their company. It's so crazy to me.
When I've always felt that, like, when someone does go down, it's either they did something, they messed up really bad, or they're kind of on the outs.
Oh yeah.
I remember, and I can't remember, we talked about this before, but Strauss-Kahn, he was the head of the World Bank, and he got busted with the hotel. There was a maid at the hotel in New York, and they ended up going after him. And my first thought was, they're not going after him because he did that to the maid. They're going after him for some other. They decided they wanted him out, or for whatever reason, and he wasn't playing ball, or something happened, because they don't. It's the whole purpose of all this, and I think the reason why people that have tendencies towards pedophilia and these other things are actually recruited, because you can blackmail them, and that's
exactly.
And that's a big piece of this, is just you can get them to pass the legislation, you can control them essentially. So
yeah.
And so if they do go after you, it's like all the guys are doing it. They're just going after this guy, and they're going to cherry pick this person that they're going to go after. Now, Epstein's an interesting case, because it's these women who were just very adamant about, really pushing the case forward. What's your thoughts on that, in terms of the women that have come forward against Epstein, and how strong that they've been in not letting this go?
I'm friends with Maria, and she's so strong. Like, it's hard on all of them. Like, I've only talked to Virginia like a few times, but she's not stopping, like, she is not going to give up. Maria she has cancer. She's going through like surgery. She just had heart surgery. She didn't get anything from Epstein, at all, from the estate or anything. And she's really hitting it hard. Her sister, Annie, was trafficked and everything with him. And she was the first person to report him to the FBI back in, like, I don't know, 30 years ago now. And they did nothing. But I feel bad for them, because they I heard a narrative that I was like, what the hell? Like, I heard a narrative that Virginia shouldn't get like any more money, and all she wants is money, and she signed a deal and she recruited other people. And I'm just thinking, like, they don't understand, like, when you're in that position with these people, like, and they tell you to go pick up girls, like, they were also threatened to do that. It's not like they were just like, okay, yeah, like, I'll go recruit young girls. Like, it wasn't just for money the way that they like to advertise that it was. It was mainly like psychological manipulation, like fear. They like Maria says, like Ghislaine Maxwell used to call her and threaten her and be like, oh, well, I know where you jog every day, and that would be a really easy place for me to kill you. Like, she would just call her and harass her, and threaten her. And so it's like, I don't think people really understand like the psychological manipulation that went on behind closed doors with them. Just kind of just like it. That's like their company is basically psychological manipulation, like the Epsteins and the Maxwells. Like her father, who was the Israeli Mossad agent, his whole thing was like blackmailing people. And he did a lot with the scientists. He would fund all of their research and he would publish it, but then he would make it to where you couldn't actually access anything you published because it would be so expensive to, like, he held things over people's heads all the time. And so people, they judge that and they don't understand like what the girls are actually going through. So I just think they're like really strong for keep on going and not listening to the people that are really, and it's sad because a lot of the people that they want mentioned, like Lex Wessner, they're not mentioning him like that, or Jean-Luc Brunel, like they're not really bringing those people up. And that's the thing, like they traffic these kids to who, like who are they giving them to? And I think that's at the point right now what we have to focus on is like, who are they, trafficking the kids to and what happens to them? Because I don't really know. And last time I don't know. It's like I told you before, I don't think anything's going to happen from it. She got convicted and everything, but I mean, what's going to happen next? Because it wasn't just her. It was like a whole bunch of people involved in those groups. So that's how I kind of feel about it. But,
well, I also think about how tough that would be because you finally get the nerve to go to the authorities. And then to have the authorities not do anything, that's got to be a major blow.
That's how it felt for me. Like I was, like everything that I went through, like I just wanted them to listen. Like I knew they were going to judge me. I kind of figured but I didn't think they were going to judge me in the way that they did. Like I didn't think they were going to accuse me of like being a prostitute. Like I didn't think they were going to try. Like I really thought that they were going to be concerned. They're police, like they say they want to help and serve, which they don't, but they claimed they wanted to help. And like, they literally belittled me, and they did the same thing to the Epstein victims. They belittled them. They made them sound like they were liars. Even though there was like pictures of like Prince Andrew and Virginia, like, and he was like sweating and he tried to say that, well, that wasn't me. Like, it's just like, come on, bro. Like, like take some accountability. I think that's all they really want is accountability, like to hold them accountable and have something happen. Like, it's got to be it is devastating, but it's got to be even more devastating because it's such a high profile case now, like, and their names are just being thrown around in the dirt. And it makes me sad to see how humanity has reacted to it. Like I just, a lot of people, I've seen people say that, well, the whole trial is fake, and it could be. I haven't seen any pictures of her getting arrested. There has been no leaked photos. We don't actually know, but if we're going off of what they're telling us, I still believe that, Maria and Virginia and all the victims are actually trying to expose this. And I think we should support them, not, take the media narrative and go along with it and say that they don't deserve anything. That was kind of depressing to watch, the way that people reacted to the entire situation. Because like, if it was up to me, I'd be like protesting every day, but
Yeah.
I know it's not going to actually do anything. So it kind of sucks.
What's the update on the Ghislaine? Where are we at with that?
So apparently I thought they sealed the records, but now they're saying that she's probably going to name names, but I don't know. She got convicted 5 out of the 6 charges. But I don't understand, like, I don't know, like, to me, she's done this to multiple women. It's not just one person. And the way that they worded it, like the word at the conviction, it was kind of like she was found guilty on trafficking and I forget exactly the language they used, but the way they worded it, it sounded like they were talking about single, like not plural people. It was about one case, because I guess they have to go off of what they can prove and everything. But so far, like, she's convicted out of 5 or 5 out of the 6, and I guess she's going to look at like 35 plus years in prison if they actually give that to her. I don't know, because you know how that goes. It's like they say this, but who knows what's going to actually happen.
Yeah.
But I wrote down like 10 things that I think the public should know about trafficking. And so the top 10 things that I wrote down was that children being online unsupervised means that your kid's obviously at risk for traffickers. Advocates have reported that traffickers are now targeting kids and teenagers through basically all types of social media, chat rooms, Instagram, Facebook. And a lot of the kids' chat rooms, I've noticed, are either run by sketchy people or they're owned by the same people who are super sketchy. So like for example, the one chat room was called kidschat.net. I had a friend who basically made a fake profile and put herself on the site to see how, it would go. And immediately it was like an incoming of pedophiles, just incoming. And this is a kids chat room. Incoming, it was like age, sex, location, ? And then a picture of themselves. And not like a picture of their face, you know what I mean? Like a picture of that. And they were sending this to children, and these were chat rooms. So it's like parents have no idea, like when your kid gets online, like you want to see what they're doing, like you want to be able to be confident in the fact that they're not going to come across the website that's going to exploit them or manipulate them into leaving and taking them. And where I'm at in Palm Beach County, it's pretty much, it ranks, I think it's like number 3 in the most trafficking cases in Florida, which was where Epstein was from. And then if you're going by states, California, Texas, and Florida are the main states that have the highest trafficking cases. Obviously around the Super Bowls, that's like super, they do a lot of trafficking during those big events. It's basically surpassing the sale of arms and sale of illegal drugs. So humans are more profitable than drugs and guns. Like, it sounds crazy, but you can use a human over and over and over again in the same day and make X amount of money. Whereas, you can only sell drugs to those people once. It's just kind of crazy to think about. And another thing to be aware of would be the signs. So like if they're withdrawing from schools, if your kid gets like straight A's and all of a sudden they're starting to get C's, or they're falling behind, or they don't want to hang out with their friends, or they don't want to eat at the dinner table with you anymore, you might want to ask them, like obviously it could be something else, but it would be a good idea to ask what's wrong, because a lot of times these traffickers will threaten them and they'll tell them like, I'll kill your whole family. And so they're not going to, if they don't want their parents to die and they're young, so they believe it. And so they'll just withdraw and they'll be in their own little world pretty much, and they won't tell anybody. Another thing is like hospitals. If you're like a nurse and you see scratches or like bruises on their knees, or like they have a bad, like their back is bad and they have a person with them that seems to be controlling everything, like in the situation, like is telling you what's wrong with them, they're not allowed to leave. And they're from like another country, like Mexico, or like, like another country coming here. You should probably look into make sure that person's okay, because it's a good chance that they're being trafficked for farmers. And because that's another thing, it's not just sex trafficking, it's for work. A lot of the big farmers that, they still want slave labor. And so they'll buy these poor immigrants who are just coming over, provide them no health care, and they'll give them like the lowest amount of money possible, and they'll just make them work, just like prison labor, pretty much. Like it's the same thing, except they're just using immigrants.
Yeah, I know they're also like a lot of times like paying off a debt. They say, okay, we're gonna, this is how much it costs to bring you over, even though they inflate all of those numbers. And so like, yeah, a lot of times people are just trying to pay off the debt that it becomes impossible to actually pay off intentionally. So
yeah, it's horrible. And like, they'll use that, like, like that. And they're also trafficking a lot of people through the border. And I don't think Democrats I know like a lot of Democrats don't like to talk about that part, but we should be talking. I'm not for like a wall. I'm not saying, I don't really care about the immigration problem. I don't think it's right to separate families. And I don't think after somebody's been here for 5 years, they should be extra. I don't believe in that. But what I'm saying is like, we should still have people there to make sure that people aren't being trafficked, because they are. And, either sold into the sex slave trade, which is very common in New York and California, and a lot of the nail salons that people go to and get their nails done, they don't realize that those people doing their nails, if they're probably Asian, they have a good chance that they're being, forced to do that. Like, people don't think about things that they see every day. The workers in the fields, like, are they being paid? Are they being trafficked? Are they, working off a debt? Like, people don't think about those things when they look at places like, especially inner cities, like they're in New Jersey, where I used to live. They used to have a ton of people working in these stores and in Asian food places and Chinese food. And you don't think about stuff like that, but it's happening right in front of you. I mean, if there's things you can do, like going to a website, like if you're serious about it and you want to make a difference, like you can go to this website called slaveryfootprint.org, and you can trace your product back to how many people, have made it, and what types of people made it, if it was slaves or if it was a regular person. Like, that website tracks a lot of that, which I thought was pretty cool. But it's just such a huge problem, and I don't think people really understand how big it actually is. Like, if you estimate it for globally, I think it's like 71% of people of enslaved people are basically women, girls, white men, and boys account for 29%. So the majority of it is women and girls. In 2018, over half, 51.6% of the criminal human trafficking cases active in the U.S. were sex trafficking cases, and they were involving only children. So that means like over half of those cases were from pedophiles. And an average age 18 would enter the sex trade in the United States is 12 to 14 years old. So they're really young. And many of the victims are like runaways or people that don't have like stable families, or kind of like the same girls that Epstein went after, because they were young, they were vulnerable, they didn't know much, they didn't have any money, so they were desperate, so they believed that he was going to help them. And so those are some of the things that I think, are important, like the signs, knowing them, and just being aware of your surroundings and thinking about the people that you're engaging with on a daily basis. You know what I mean? But, like I've tried to bring this up to my sheriff, Rick Bradshaw. I've tried, because I really think that like my solutions would be like, putting up poster signs. Like, I know they do this now. They finally started doing it in like different, what are the places when you drive and you pull over and it's like a rest stop area? They finally started putting them on the bathroom doors. Like, if you're being trafficked, do this or whatever. But before, they didn't really have that. And so I think like in order to make it, more aware, people could be, like posting them on our hospitals. Doctors should be trained and, shown how to look at the signs. And Another example would be airports. My friend actually just started working there, and he told me that they don't even go over like what it looks like if somebody is trafficking someone through an airport. Like, and to me, that's just bizarre because there's so many cases of people being trafficked through airports, and these people aren't even being trained on how to spot that. So, we gotta do more work, definitely. And to recognize, I think, is the biggest thing, and to see and to be aware of what you're looking at and how it looks in order to do something. Because the chances of a girl reporting it to the police is like a 0.1 chance. It's a very, very low chance. So like all of the cases that are reported, like 90 something percent of them are reported through other people like you and me. So, it's good to know, and to know the signs, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And then should I mention the rehab industry down here with Allison, like how she was talking about impact investing?
Sure, why not? So this picture I have up on the screen here, you want to tell me a little bit about, where was this taken, and, what was the situation here?
Okay, so when I was in New Jersey and I got in trouble, I had an option to do rehab or go to jail, probably for a couple of years. And so I decided, obviously, that I would take the rehab because I didn't want to go to jail again. And they sent me down to Florida. And this was at the height of like the rehab industry down here. It was like booming. Everybody had like a halfway house. Everybody had a rehab. It was totally unregulated. It happened right after Obama signed that law that insurance companies have to cover addiction, which was a good thing, but it turned out to be bad because it wasn't regulated at all. So they literally had people, like the place that I went to, that we didn't know. Like nobody was aware of this when they sent us there. Maybe the people that made the deal was, but me and my family, like we had no idea. The place that I was here in this picture was in South Florida, and I forget the actual name of, I don't even know if I should mention it because, like if they can sue me or whatever, but so I was in a rehab and I had just come down. I was like a complete mess. That was right when I was like homeless and living outside, and it was like winter time, so I was like super cold. I just remember getting like thrown into this environment where I had to like get changed into scrubs, and then they were like doing like an interview process, and they had to take a before picture when I got to their facility. So that was the context of this photo. And after we took the picture, I stayed there for about a week, and then I realized like really quickly that it was a complete scam. The whole rehab got raided by like the DEA, I believe it was, and the FBI, and they came and shut it down. And so a bunch of people were stranded, and then we had to find other halfway houses that would take us or would take my insurance. And since the whole insurance thing down here at the time was like booming, I was able to get into like any rehab because all they cared about was your insurance policy. So like if you had a decent insurance policy that would pay for drug tests or urinalysis tests, they'll take you and you can get in anywhere. So that was probably in like, I don't even remember what year that was. I would say like 2014 or 2015 that picture was taken.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to include this to insert into the interview for this next section to give some context, because when you talk about these rehab centers, you're not talking about it from an outsider. You have firsthand experience, and you know intimately about the situation down there, and
oh yeah, I've been to so many places down here. They call it's actually there's a term for it. It's called the South Florida like rehab shuffle, which is like you go to detox, and then you go to a rehab, and then you go to a halfway house, and then you go and you leave, and then you either get high or you just leave, and then you get another rehab to pay you money to come to their detox. It's like everybody was like making $1 off of it. Like you got paid a certain amount of money to come to their place, And then for them getting you to come there, they would get a check from their boss, and then they could send you and refer you to another place, so they'd get money from your insurance company. So it was like a huge scheme that they had going on in Florida at the time, which it probably still goes on a little bit today, but it was definitely bad back then when I was there. So that's like, I totally know everything. Like when I talk about it, it's not like, like I'm just coming at this from an outsider perspective. Like you said, like I've literally lived it and been through it and seen how crazy and ridiculous the system actually was to people and how it doesn't benefit them at all.
Yeah. And that's why I wanted to talk to you and do this interview, is because, you're coming at these issues from a real world experience. And too often we're listening to, academics, or, we're listening to people on the news and media. You're listening to outsiders, or you're listening to nonprofit professionals.
Exactly.
We're not listening to people who actually live it. And
exactly.
It's
a little bit different when somebody tells the story from something that they've actually gone through. It's like you get a total different perspective. Like somebody that would want to send their kid down to Florida for rehab, like they would obviously go to like the rehabs and check them out, but they don't hear it from like a person that's actually went there and gone through the whole system, and seen what they have to say about it. And I think if they did, they would probably think a little bit differently,
Right.
So Allison always talks about impact investing. And down here, I think it's interesting because they have a huge rehab industry. And up until like maybe 2018, probably still goes on today, but up until 2018, they were like running rampant with basically getting people. They didn't really care about your recovery at all. They only cared about the money they would get per head. So like if you came down here and you had a problem, they would immediately say like, okay, well, Jason is worth X amount of money through his insurance company. And then you would come down here and they would send that in and they'd get paid money. And then they would take people, they would bring them in, they would pay them to use drugs, they would fail their drug tests. And then when they failed their drug tests, they would take those drug tests and send them into the insurance company. And the insurance company would give them X amount of money. And then they could send them to another place and they would get paid for that as well. So it kind of reminds me of impact investing. It may not be exactly that, but I mean, you have an entire industry who is built around fraud, built around frauding insurance companies, and then not caring about the effects of people whatsoever. So then you get services that prey on people for those problems that the whole system created. You know what I mean? It's unbelievable the amount of people that have come down here thinking that they want help and they're going to get help, and they just end up being out on the streets, or their halfway house gets raided, which happened a bunch of times. Their place would get raided and they'd be sitting out on the corner and they would have nowhere to go. They'd have all their, like a book bag or a suitcase of stuff, and they'd be completely screwed, and they're in a different state that they don't know anybody. And this all happened because of fraud and money and greed and the laws. And it started happening when Obama signed that law in, basically saying that insurance companies have to cover addiction issues. So it's good. That's a good step. Like they should be covering that. But if there's no regulation in that, that's basically what happened in Florida. And now I see it happening in California, and I see it happening in Dallas, Texas. And Allison wrote a piece about that in, I forget if it was in Texas or somewhere else, but it was basically impact investing in the rehab industries and how they played off of that. So I just thought that was interesting to bring up.
Well, when you economically or when you financially incentivize something, you're going to get more of that something. It's not rocket science,
Exactly.
So yeah, it's a real problem, and I see this impact investing as it grows is going to be a total nightmare, and you're not going to see the problems go away. You're just going to see them, like Allison says, they're just going to manage it. It'll just be managed.
Yep. It's like late stage capitalism, just trying to do anything. Like it's so crazy because they knew the impact it would have. You know, they would bring all these people down here, incentivize them to go here first, even if it was just offering them cigarettes. Like, that's considered illegal, you know? Like, you can't tell somebody to come to your center and offer them something in order to do so. And it wasn't just cigarettes. Like, those were the innocent ones. Like, I'm talking about the ones that were like, come to my place, you can get high, I'll buy you drugs. You know, as long as you fail this test and stay here for 2 weeks, you'll get a paycheck and I'll get a paycheck. Like, that's completely like, that should be illegal, you know?
Has anyone done reporting on this?
Happening.
Have there been any investigative pieces about this, or I mean, how do you know about this?
Tons of them.
Yeah.
There's tons of them. I think because it started like I'm not like really a huge fan, but Lisa Ling did do a piece on basically the entire it's called I think it was Lisa Ling that did the OxyContin Express, which was like from Maryland, from West Virginia, from New Jersey. They were all coming down to Florida. And I think it was Rick Scott at the time was our governor. I could be wrong on that, so I'm not sure. But I know Rick Scott was involved. And he's a Republican, and he believes, you know, less government or whatever he believes in. But his excuse was he didn't want to implement laws because it would violate our privacy at the pharmacy. But then come to find out, his wife was like a huge executive for like a pharmaceutical company. So it kind of was like he didn't want to stop it because she was making a ton of money from it. And so that birthed like the entire, in my opinion, it birthed like the whole rehab industry down here. You know, like first they supplied the problem and then they came in with their solution, which was to build a huge rehab state and exploit everybody and take their insurance money. But another person did a documentary about the girl who I know who she is, the girl that I showed you. I think it was like a video, and basically she was saying how she was at this halfway house and they were exploiting her. They were forcing her to go out there and prostitute herself and bring it back to pay him. He would supply her with drugs and crack, and she really thought she was coming to get clean. That was like really fucking sad. And that happens all the time. Someone did a documentary about that. And then if you look, like there's like a task force now that Florida has created to try to cut down on this problem. I think it's been successful because I haven't seen as many things happening lately. But if you look up South Florida rehab getting busted, I mean, you should see the amount of people that got busted for it. It's insane. There's so many people. But they were doing that for like a long time and getting away with it, you know, and it's horrible to do that to people, you know.
Absolutely. The Podesta thing, though, I remember reading those emails and I'm like, yeah, they're talking about something else there. Like, you know, it's clear, like,
it's like a code word.
It was code for something else. Now, maybe someone could argue it was code for something that didn't have to do with pedophilia, but you know, it wasn't just about ordering a fucking pizza. Like if you read it, you're just like, they're actually talking about something else. Like it was, I wish I still had them. I actually had all those emails and
the crazy thing is like the FBI never investigated it. Like they literally just ignored all of that and tried to say that it was like a Russian fucking hack job.
Yeah.
You know, like wiki. I was like, shut the fuck up. Like, but if you look at like the FBI, like they literally had all those code words being used for pedophilia. So it's like, and like I fucking hate QAnon. Like I don't know where the fuck, you know. I think it was like a whole Israeli, like, you know, all that bullshit. But like they brought that up, and that was probably the only thing they were right about. But I feel like they used that and weaponized it so that nobody would fucking believe it at all. Like, right. And they did a good job at it because literally, if you bring this up to like anybody, like people will be like, "Oh, she's a fucking right wing nut job." Like, it's just, and like even at the protest, like there was like so many people there at this protest. I had people coming up to me like, "Well, are you with QAnon?" And I was like, "What?" And they're like, "Are you a Trump supporter?" And I'm like, no, what the fuck? Like, you know what I mean? Oh, okay, well then can I have a flyer? I'm like, dude, what? Like, so now you're like bringing in like child trafficking with Trump. Like, don't do that, you know? Like, stop politicizing it. Because now people don't even care. Like, they think it's all a conspiracy theory. Like, right. And I'm like, well, that just ruined any chances we had, you know? Like,
Yeah, it's kind of strange that it's not more of a concern to more people. I know that it's become politicized, you know, and I know that like,
Yeah,
so like people on the right are like, oh, John Podesta and all of that stuff, and but it shouldn't be about, you know, Republican or Democrat, or I mean, who gives a shit? Like, it's the question is this occurring, and if so, you know, this needs to stop, and it becomes like almost a joke, like really.
exactly.
I literally don't give a shit about what any of these pundits say. Like, I don't pay any attention to them at all. I don't,
Right?
it doesn't even enter into my world because I actively avoid professional propagandists. I'm not interested in what a professional propagandist has to say. You know, I want
Yeah,
to look at what the actual
exactly.
evidence is and listen to someone who's like a real researcher, you know.
Yeah,
Anyways,
exactly.
it's kind of amazing, but
Yeah, it's like you can see where people like what or what news source they listen to just by like the few things that they do now. It's so polarized. It's
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, it would be interesting to
But
do a thing where you have recordings of like the media saying it and then the person saying it. Like, you know,
oh my god, I
people
know.
just parrot whatever they hear.
Whatever. It's so crazy. I remember back when it was like, you know, when that whole Podesta story happened with pizza or Comet Ping Pong with James Alefantis. See, like they used that and totally used that as like a huge distraction. And even if you do go back and look, like I posted about the art of the embassies the other day, and how many people that are in that group of people with the art and embassies, and basically their main goal was basically just to, I don't want to use the word traffic, but transport goods in a safe and secure way so that nobody else would see what's in them. And I feel like they use art as a cover for like so many, for money laundering, for trafficking, for, you know, whatever they want to do. They just use it under the cover of art. And so James Alefantis, his Instagram, if you looked at it back then, now it's private, but back then he had it open and people were researching him. And a lot of his pictures were like very, they weren't illicit and they're not illegal, but they're on the borderline of creepy and what the hell are you doing type of thing. Like he would have a picture of a baby, and next to the baby would be like some type of word like, oh, like can't wait to eat this baby later, like, you know, and his friends would comment and be like, see baby, and like you can argue that that's a joke and it's funny, and I can see how people would believe that. And then you have, you know, but he's also, you know, running the same circles as Hillary Clinton and Tony Podesta and his brother, I'm drawing a blank, Tony Podesta and Anthony Weiner. No, Anthony Weiner's another one, but
That's another issue. Yeah.
the two Podesta brothers, yeah, that's a whole other thing. But they're all friends. And so, you know, you look at the people involved in these circles, like Bill Clinton, who was named by the accusers of Epstein. His lawyer actually helped a woman named Laura Silsby, who since then changed her name, get out of a huge human trafficking bust. Like she went to Haiti because of the whole, you know, Haitian relief thing when Hillary was doing that failed thing where she said she was going to help Haiti and build them up, and basically just took all the money and they never seen anything happen. So Laura Silsby was a person that was friends with the Clintons, and she runs in the same circles as James Alefantis and Tony Podesta and all of the other like Democratic, you know, people that are like, you know, like the super lobbyists and all of that. And so Laura Silsby went to Haiti and had 33 children, and she was claiming she was going to bring them to a foster home, and she had parents for these kids. But she got stopped and she was arrested because these kids that she was going to take, that she said didn't have parents, actually had parents. And so they were super pissed off and they were like, why are you taking my kid? You know, give them back. And so they ended up arresting this lady, and she was going to face jail time. And I guess she knew, Clintons and all of that. So the Clintons actually had a lawyer who bailed her out of that entire situation. And it's odd because if you look at like what Laura Silsby was into, she was also, like when you send alerts out to people for like missing children or like a disaster or something like that, she was actually on one of the companies that were sending out alerts to children or to parents about missing children. And so it's like very, when you think about it, it's like she was just arrested for trafficking 33 children, but she sits on the board of a company that is supposed to notify you when they go missing. Like, I see a problem with that, like that doesn't seem normal to me. And so it's like very, you can't really like move anything. And that's like the whole point with this Comet ping pong thing. People blew it out of proportion and they said, oh, well, the basement, there's no basement. So the story's done. It was all a lie. That's what they're saying. Because they didn't have a basement, the whole thing is bullshit. Right. But it doesn't work that way. Like these people are still very connected.
Well, and how many people have actually, read those emails and it's bizarre.
I've read all of them.
Yeah.
I mean, the emails are bizarre. Like when they had emails, I think it was to Obama about, how they were going to send children like ages 5, 9, and 11 for entertainment. And I mean, why would you do that? Right. What? And then they bring Marina Abramovic into it, which is also big into art and, spiritual retreats, who is also friends with John of God, who was arrested. And, there's actually a reporter, stop biting me, a reporter who was reporting on John of God, and she was saying that he was farming babies. Like he was getting these women and bringing them into like this cult atmosphere. And then he was getting them pregnant and he was selling the babies onto the black market. And she ended up, committing suicide. And then maybe a year after that, the story broke of him, doing like, really weird stuff to people. He was like cutting their brain, like their head, and for like art or like spiritual things. He was just a sick person.
Oh,
and
I hadn't heard about that.
Yeah, and Oprah introduced him to everybody, which when you think about it, it's like these people are all in the same circles, like they're all weird and they're all in the same circles. This cat.
So yeah, was he connected to like the Nixum thing or whatever what was it?
Nexium with
yeah.
No, but they did kind of like the same thing. Like it was, like bringing people in and like basically branding them and then using it like a cult, like, like brainwashing people. There's like a whole bunch of stuff that involves like elite trafficking that you could literally, like the Finders cult. There's so many things that you can look at in the past and just, like look at the names of the people, see who they're friends with, and then see what they've either been convicted of or accused of. I mean, how many more people do you need to see before you're like, this is a problem,
Right.
And they all frequent the same people, they're always around the same people. And so that whole Pizzagate thing with Comet Ping Pong, it really pissed me off because then you had a whole bunch of people that were, like the Trump followers with QAnon and completely destroyed any type of investigation or, pro-human or, anti-human trafficking movements. Like they were afraid to touch it because they would think that, you're QAnon, you're crazy. Like I can't tell you how many times I've been called a conspiracy theorist, QAnon believer, because I was talking about human trafficking. And I'm just like, this is like the worst thing that's ever happened, like the QAnon movement and the way that I think it was a psyop personally, but the way that they got people to believe that, Trump was going to save everybody when he too was friends with Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Clinton. It's kind of like, it's mind blowing.
Yeah, so like the QAnon, I do think I also agree that it was a psyop, but it's kind of it's a really powerful one because it's not just targeting the followers of it, it's also targeting the people that oppose it. In fact, maybe even more so. Like It shuts down
Yes,
conversation. It's like people don't even want to hear it. Like they're not going to go there.
totally.
There's these
It
things that like are just like too like it's like hard. It's hard to believe. Like there's certain things that are fact in the world that people just can't wrap their mind around, and it actually allows it to continue on. Um, but so like on the Pizzagate thing, you have people on the right who are jumping onto that bandwagon. You have people on the right that are talking about it because they are opposed politically to the Clintons. And now I'm also opposed
yeah,
politically to the Clintons, but it shouldn't be whether or not, this person is aligned with your political values or not. And then you have
exactly.
people on the left dismiss it because the people on the right are talking about it, and it's going after the Clintons. So the politics shouldn't have anything to do with it. It should be, like, is this thing going on? And if so, it needs to stop. Like, and the people need to be held accountable that are doing it, and that doesn't happen. And that's why it's so problematic when this becomes politicized. It shouldn't be about politics. It should be about human rights.
Absolutely. And that was like, it's kind of like they used QAnon as like a straw man argument. Like, if you realize now, like, if you don't want to get, the shot, then the left almost tells everybody that you're like a QAnon pro-Trump conspiracy theorist that believes in QAnon. Like, it's so crazy how they use that as kind of like a straw man argument to like block a bunch of people into one group and then label them, and then anybody that opposes them, you know, they're not awake or they're stupid or it just completely, like you said, shuts down any type of dialogue. And it's bad because people have been so politicized and so polarized that now they don't even want to like see opposing viewpoints and sit down and have a conversation with each other. Like, I have a friend, and it's horrible because we can't even speak anymore. Like, she will not talk to me. Like, I went to a protest, I think it was like almost 2 years ago now, that we threw, or that we held in Palm Beach County. And she was just like, immediately what popped into her mind was, I'm a QAnon conspiracy theorist. I'm a pro-Trump supporter. Like, I don't, it was just nuts. And I was like, no, that's nothing what happened. Like, we were literally rallying for children. Like, this has nothing to do with Trump or QAnon. But that's what it did. Like, it actually made people just completely like blindsided in one way of thinking, and the whole QAnon thing, I think, was basically, they got a lot of the boomers, it seems like the older people, to really, I think it was just to get Trump votes. That's what I think. Like, I really think they just wanted to get all these people and, make sure that they voted for Trump and keep them pacified and, make them believe so they don't go out and protest what he does wrong. Like, because if you notice, like, anything he did wrong, they had an excuse for it. They were like, oh no, well, this really means, and I'm like, I'm not about to do all that. Like, this man literally just signed this. He cut regulations. He did all these different things. And they had an excuse for every single one of them. And to me, that's like, you're just being pacified so that you don't go and, protest or just, say he did something wrong. They won't even criticize the guy, like
Yeah, it's
it
kind of
reminds me
amazing.
of Cass Sunstein. Like, Cass Sunstein wrote a book about that, how he could infiltrate conspiracy theories and make it so that people have more trust in government and less trust in, like, um, like, more trust in government, and they second guess themselves. So it's like, like, conspiracy theories that you can infiltrate, probably like the CIA, like they would, like, Mockingbird and all that. Like, they probably infiltrated and started these conspiracy theories. And that way it's either a pro-right or pro-left conspiracy theory. So because he basically said, like, when you have groups of people that are believing in one thing and more people join the group, you're going to radicalize people even more into believing this, whatever it is. And so I think that's what they kind of did with QAnon. Like, they took a whole bunch of people that would have never believed anything, unless if it wasn't for the whole Trump thing. And
it's kind of amazing because, I mean, Donald Trump has been good friends and a huge supporter of the Clintons, and
absolutely,
is friends with, Epstein, and it's like there's like, are you not seeing what's going on
it
here?
literally, it's like you can't. It's like if you think to them about that, well, Trump kicked him out of the Trump Tower. Like, I don't care. Like, he was literally, he flew on his jet one time. He was seen in pictures talking to him, looking at younger girls. He said that he likes younger girls like Jeffrey Epstein did. And I'm not accusing him of being a pedophile. But isn't it funny that all these people are also accused of sexual assault? And now all of a sudden, Trump's an angel, even though he was literally accused by how many women, for sexual assault. I mean, and you say that to somebody and it's like, oh, well, you're completely wrong. It's like all rational thought just goes out the window, and whatever crazy thing that they read, on like 4chan, because that's like what it was for a while, they believe that. I mean, I've never seen anything like it, to be honest. It's crazy.
It's amazing. And the other piece of the story that's left out, I mean, there's actually mainstream documentaries about Epstein, and they conveniently leave out the fact that he was blackmailing. Like that's what was going on there. He was working with the Mossad, and he was literally blackmailing powerful people. And so like that's like, I'm not going to say it's the most important. The most important part of the story is the women who were, victimized by this whole situation. But the second most important part of the story is the fact that he was blackmailing powerful people. And I actually had this theory many years ago, even before the Pizzagate and before all the Epstein, came out. I had this theory that people are recruited based on dirt that they have on them because they're easier to control. You have someone who's a pedophile, they're going to pass the legislation that you want. They're going to do your bidding. And I think that we need to take a serious look at that. I don't know if you ever saw, like, are you familiar with the Franklin cover up and all that? There was a documentary, and I have it somewhere, but it was supposed to air, I think, on like Discovery Channel or Learning Channel, but it got like
yeah, they didn't air it, I think.
They didn't air it, but there's like bootleg copies of it. But it was about Boys Town, which is like a nonprofit where they're taking these kids who, don't, like maybe they don't have parents or they come from a broken home or whatever. And a lot of these kids are, testimonies from these kids about sexual abuse, including like powerful people like politicians and whatnot. And
I think Reagan was involved in that too.
Yeah, I hadn't heard about that, but it would.
He was named in one of them.
Oh, okay.
Like and it's crazy because it's very similar to what Epstein did. Like, I mean, people think it's bizarre and that they would never do this. Like, I mean, they have all the money in the world, and it's like especially Ghislaine's father, the Maxwell family, like he was like a Mossad agent, like, that was like their family business was like a blackmail operation. And like, I mean, they had Bill Clinton in a dress, in Epstein's house it was just hilarious. But like, like that, why people would think they wouldn't do that, I don't understand. Like if they want certain policies passed and they want certain things, well, of course they're going to go for the person that's going to, take whatever dirt they have, or they can, I think now they could easily just target you personally and put something on your computer, and then it comes out that you downloaded, something porn or something ridiculous, like they have people that are actually doing that. And so that was basically their family business over there. And so it absolutely affects us because it'll come down. Do you really think that they want like somebody like me or you like going into politics that actually gives the shit and like wants to help people and is ready to make a change? Like they don't want you or me getting in the way of their money and their influence. You know what I mean? Like they'll just get rid of us like real fast. And I think that's how it basically works with our government. Like, I don't think we actually like, see, I don't believe in electing people. I don't like this entire system, but for somebody that, values the Constitution, like, they should really be looking at this, because how much does your vote actually matter if you have people like this in the background? It's like a shadow government just controlling everything. And then you have the banking industry and, all of that influences it. So, I mean, it's just a lot.
Yeah, well, speaking of which, I know that you have, and we'll come back to your story in a minute, but I know you've done testimony at like city council, and I've been involved with different activism where we've come and spoken to city council groups, or we've done even like an activism where we took over, we had a whole bunch of people come in with signs and everything, but it's almost it's a bad joke because these city council people literally don't give a fuck about what you say. Like they're playing on their phones, they're already bought and paid for, and they don't care about, like, to me it was like if you go to the city council thing, it's not about talking to the city council, it's just a matter of like going on record of like opposing something that is going to happen anyways, because these people are all crooked. And it's really disheartening. And I also think that like people are like not facing reality, and the conspiracy thing is a huge piece of that. I'm so fed up with people that make jokes about conspiracy theory or whatever, because the fact of the matter is powerful people conspire with one another. Get that through your thick skull, like that's a reality. And the evidence of it is overwhelming. The level of denial it takes is astonishing.
I literally just had an like, not an argument, but I kind of was like joking with this woman, like, but she was dead serious. Like, she was like, why would we know what conspiracy theories are, and one thing you're lacking is just knowledge. And I'm like, okay, lady. And then she was like, I mean, why would these powerful people get together and want to hurt everybody? Or I'm like, are you serious? Like, I thought she was joking, like, because I really couldn't believe she felt that way. But she did. She was dead serious that these people don't get together and plan things and want to control the population. Like, she truly believes that, like, they're all just.
It's like the media lies to you and lies to you and lies to you. Politicians lie to you and lie to you and lie to you. And you keep coming back for more. You keep voting for them. Yeah. You keep turning on that television and listening to these fuckers. It's mind blowing. It's mind blowing. I will say that people are waking up, but not as fast as they need to be. I seriously started my activism probably like 97, 98. And, just since the time that I kind of started, I have seen, a massive growth of people that are actually like paying attention and listening to it. Unfortunately, in terms of like percentage of the population, it's still a very small percentage, but, there has been a shift. It's just very slow. And I'm just worried they're going to reset the clock. I think like wars or like what's going on now with the Great Reset COVID thing, they're trying to reset the clock. They want to like put everybody back in their place. People are getting the people are getting a little unruly over here. We need to knock them back a few. And I think that's kind of partly what these things are for. And anyway, so yeah, it's nuts. But yeah, so I want to come back to your testimony, but first I want to just you've got a pretty shocking story that you told me, and I don't know if you're comfortable with that. Would you be interested in sharing that with people?
Yeah. So I was actually I was trafficked before, and it was back in 2012, and I was at a bus station in Orlando, and there was a man there who was actually dressed like really nice, really like shiny shoes, and just like seemed like a very presentable person. He had like a really thick accent, because he said he was from the Virgin Islands, and so it's just like a long story, but I had missed my bus. I had all of my stuff on another bus, and it was just like a mess. Like I was trying to get back home. And so, he told me that he would help me or whatever. And I believed him because I really didn't, my phone was dead. I had nothing. And all I had was like my ID. And so, at first I was kind of like, like I was nervous because I didn't know who he was. I didn't know anybody, and I was in like a strange place. And so I was like very like standoffish. And then after like 4 hours went by, I was tired and I just like wanted to get home and nobody would help me. And he's like, oh, I'll help you. Like, like just come outside, blah, blah, blah. So I follow him. And as I walk outside, he has another, like a car with like, not like a car, but like a van type of thing. And there was 2 other people in it, and they just literally just grabbed me and like threw me in the van. And I was, nobody's seen, I guess. And I was like yelling and everything. And they ended up driving me all the way to this hotel, which is Motel 6, which I also saw recently that there was like a lawsuit or something for anybody that's been trafficked in Motel 6. Like they can now sue them or something. I don't know. But so it was in Motel 6, and he had locked me in this room and tied my arms and my legs, and just, like he obviously, raped me and did everything like that, and like hit me. And like I was like so scared. Like I really thought that, like I would wake up, or like my family would wake up and like they would find me on like like the news, or just like in a ditch somewhere, like dead and mutilated. Like I didn't know what was going to happen. I was so scared. And so when it was crazy because he made me watch like this video, and it was like a snuff film of like people that were like having sex with somebody, and then they killed them afterwards. And it was a girl that got killed. And so in my head, I'm thinking like, oh my God, like I'm probably going to die. And then I drank water because I was so thirsty. And I think he had drugged the water, like put something into the water, because after that, it was like, I literally felt like I was paralyzed. Like I could barely move, and it wore off. But like for a while, like I couldn't do anything. So like, as he was, like doing stuff to me, like I could barely fight back. And so I ended up like, when he fell asleep, I ended up like untying like part of I don't know how you do it, but like when you're in those situations, like you would be surprised that like the power that your mind and your body has. Like I literally like was able to untie these ropes, and like I don't know how I did it still to this day. And I started running, and like I went to the door and I opened it, and I went downstairs, and on the way, like I was banging on everybody's doors because I wanted them to open the door. Like I wanted them to see me running, like so they could see my face. Like God forbid I go missing or something. Like I wanted them to remember me. And so nobody answered the door. I ran down to the front. Nobody was in the office at Motel 6. Literally nobody. It was like nobody worked there. Like I was like, where the hell is everybody? And like when I need help, nobody's there. And so I was going across, like it was weird the way that this parking lot was set up. It was like, here's the motel, and like the parking lot kind of wraps around it, and there's like a one-way entrance type of deal. And so I was on the far side, and like I started walking around. And I swear to God, like at first I thought I was crazy because I was like, what is going on? Every time I walked, like somebody's car light would come on, like, and I didn't think anything of it at first. So I was just like, excuse me, like I need help. Like nobody would answer me though. And so I was like, okay. So then I started running to another side. Like I was running through the parking lot. And as I was running, different things were happening. Like somebody's car door would open, or like they would put their light on. And what I realized was they were signaling to him, like where I was running to. Like it's crazy. Like they were so, it was like an actual group of people that were working together to do this. And so I ended up finding like this room. I guess it was like a laundry room or something. Like, I don't know, but I walked into it and I was going to lock myself in there, but it had no lock. So like, it literally felt like one of those scary movies where you're like trying to escape and like you can't escape, and like, they come and they find you because there's no lock. You can't. So what I did was I basically busted open like the fire extinguisher thing, where what they have in those cases, and I took the fire extinguisher out. Mind you, like I had literally nothing on but a white t-shirt. Like I had no pants, like no underwear, like nothing. Like I literally just had a t-shirt on. And so now I'm running through this parking lot with a fire extinguisher, and I'm literally just like looking for help. Like I'm just like screaming for help. And as soon as I make it to where their driveway is and the road is, as soon as I walk up to it and I'm about to leave, um, this car comes like flying in and like literally almost hits me and like jumps out, and I'm like, what is going on? I was like, can you please help me? Like, can I please use your phone? Like I need to call 911. And a woman gets out. So I'm like, oh, thank God, like another woman, like she'll help me, like, because if something ever like that happened to me, I would immediately be like, yeah, like I'll help you, like get in my car, I'll climb, like, that didn't happen. She was literally just silent, like completely silent. And I was like, like that's like, I was like scared. And so like I looked at the guy and he wasn't speaking either. And then the lady that I was staring at started like staring past me. So like, when someone's looking at you, but they're not looking at you, they're looking behind you. And so it's so weird. It's like I turned around and I seen him standing there, and I just immediately like, my heart just like dropped, because I was like, fuck, like I'm dead, like now I'm really dead. Like he just caught me, like I was trying to run away. I thought I would be good. No one would help me. And it turns out that they were actually working for him in the parking lot and the people that drove in. And so I was terrified, and he grabbed me and he was like, don't ever fucking do that again. And he's like, you're going to eat when I tell you to eat. You're going to sleep when I tell you can sleep. And you're going to do whatever the fuck I tell you to do. And I was like, at that point, I thought I was going to die. And so my brain was just going like a million miles a minute, just like thinking of like my family, like what are they going to think? Nobody knows where I'm at. He took my ID, he took my passport, he took my phone, um, took all my clothes. I have nothing. My luggage is on a bus somewhere that I don't even know. Everything is just, like not looking good at all. And he brought me back upstairs and he tied me again to the bed, and it was just like a horrible night. And then finally he fell asleep again. And I don't know how I did it. Like, again, like when you're in those life or death situations, like I don't know how I did it, but I was able to like sneak into his pocket without him noticing or waking up. It took me for like a half hour to do this, but I was able to grab his cell phone out, and I snuck it, and I like held it because I was afraid to call because I didn't know if the volume was up, and it was really quiet, like he was sleeping. And so I dialed 911 and I turned the volume like all the way down, and I was just like, please help me. Like I'm being kidnapped. Like I'm on the second floor and I think I'm at Motel 6. Like at the time I wasn't even sure like what hotel I was in. And they were like, okay, yeah, like we'll be there. What floor are you on? And I was like, the second one. And they were like, okay. And so they were like, you want to stay on the line? And I was like, no. Like I was terrified. Like, so I hung up the phone. And as I hung up the phone, like I seen text messages in his phone, and he was basically trying to sell me like to some other guy, like for $50,000 that was like in another country. And it was just like crazy, like what I was reading. And I was like, oh my God, like how was he going to do this? Like, like he had all my ID, but like how the hell is he actually going to do this? And so I was so scared. Like I hung up the phone. I actually deleted the call so that he couldn't see it, because if they didn't come, I didn't want to get caught calling 911, And so I ended up like putting his phone back over there, and it felt like the 20 minutes, it felt like 5 hours, but they said it was only like 20 minutes, but it felt a lot longer than that to me. And they finally got there. And I remember when the woman cop first opened the door, I just completely like, like I had, after they had untied me, like I just completely ran out of the room and hid behind like this snack machine, because I was still so scared, like even though I knew they were there, I knew like I was going to be okay. Like I was still terrified that he could get up or somebody else could come. Like, I didn't know it was going to happen, you know? And so after that happened, the cops really treated me like a piece of shit, like, to say it nicely. Like, they really treated me like I was just another whore that, you know, was working and didn't get paid. Because that's an actual question the cop had asked me. He said, it was a guy cop. And by the way, I'm still in only a t-shirt, no underwear, no shorts, nothing, just a t-shirt. So I'm naked pretty much. And he sits me down on this bed in another room of the hotel. And I'm sitting there and I'm crying and I'm cold because I was like freezing cold. I don't know. I was just so cold and I was scared. And he literally asked me, he said, okay, so what's the real story? And I was like, excuse me, you know, like what are you talking about? And he's like, you know, what's the real story? Did he not pay you? And I was just like, what? Like, I couldn't fucking believe that an officer who is working, you know, is literally asking me, like, if I'm upset that he didn't fucking pay me. Like, you know, like I was so taken back by that. And I remember telling him, and I was like, go fuck yourself. You know, like, how about you go fuck yourself? Like, who the fuck do you think you are? Like, do you not understand, like, what the fuck I just went through for you to be asking me some fucking shit like that? It really pissed me off. And I was upset. I was crying. I actually asked for another officer. I was like, I don't want to talk to you anymore. Like, he treated me like shit. Like, he was literally acting like he didn't have time to take this case. Like, he was busy and I had just bothered him. Like, it was unbelievable. So then a woman cop came in and she was a lot nicer and she tried, you know, like, to talk to me. And she was like, you know, okay, now here's the thing. They want you to literally, this is what happens. Like, when you're trafficked, this is what happens in Florida anyway. When you get trafficked and you go through an entire situation like that, when the cops come to you, you have to actually say every single thing that happened to you in order, perfectly, without fucking up and without forgetting. Like, you have to have it perfectly, because if you don't, they'll literally do what they did to me, which was, oh, well, your testimony is inconsistent and we don't have enough, it was insufficient evidence, is what they said, that because I was jumping around and because I was scared, like, literally, like, you know what I mean? Like, I was crying. I was a mess. Like, he had given me drugs. Like, I had no idea what the fuck was going on. But at the same time, everything was like horrifying to me. So, like, I'm shaking. I'm trying to tell the cops what happened. I'm tripping over my words now because, like, they're acting like, and I was intimidated. They had at least 6 or 7 cops in the same room as me. And they still haven't given me anything, like, to put over myself. So I'm still naked and I have cameras in my face. Like, they were recording this. They also had a tape recorder and they were writing everything down. And it was like, they were just like looking at me. And I felt so uncomfortable because I didn't even have a freaking blanket to put over myself to feel a little bit better, you know? And so I said something to the one woman. I'm like, listen, like, how would you feel, like, if you're sitting here naked? Like, can I please have something to put over myself? And so she's like, yes, like, I'm so sorry. So they go downstairs and I guess they went into their trunk and they had like a tarp blanket and they used that. And so I put that over me. And then I had to sit there for, I think it was like 4 to 6 hours of them just asking me like little detailed questions. And like, it was actually more confusing to me. Like, some of the things that they were asking me, like, well, when did he do this to you? Like, or at what point did he do this? Like, when did the shower occur? Or like, when did he take your shirt off? Like, I don't, you know, like, I was getting confused, like, because of the way they were asking. I was trying to like be as thorough as possible and tell them exactly what happened, but that wasn't good enough for them. And so they were going through, because I guess they were interviewing him as well in a different room. And I don't know what the hell what he told them. So it was like he was taking his story and bouncing it off of me. And of course the story was different because I'm not fucking lying, you know, he is. But they treated me like I was not like the bad one, but like I was just a hooker, and that I was trying to get like money or like something out of it, and it didn't go my way, so I was freaking out. And that was not the case at all, you know. I was just completely like, I felt like to me it felt like you know, like I've already been fucked by, you know, this person. Like he literally just, you know, raped me and degraded me and dehumanized me and all these things. And now I have the system doing the same exact fucking thing. But that actually hurt worse because I actually thought that they were the ones that would have done something and would have helped me. So it's like, I can't even go to them now. And you know, they didn't even call my parents. Like I asked to call my mom, you know, because I was literally supposed to be home and I was still in Orlando. And so I called my mom and I told her what happened. And she was like, what the fuck? You know, like why? They never contacted her. They didn't help me with anything. They actually sent me to this woman named Jessica. And I wish I knew her last name because I've been trying to find her for like years. But she had like a house for women that were like raped or abused or just were caught in prostitution and wanted to change their life. Like it was like a halfway house, but like more of a therapy halfway house where like you get help and you can move on with your life, and they help you get a job, and they, you know, like stuff like that. So they took me to this house, and first I went to the rape test and the kit where they do all the physical testing on you, and which I agreed to do. I was completely uncomfortable, but they talked me into doing it because I figured, why do you need a rape test? Like he's right there. It's not like I don't know who he is. He's literally right there. Like I don't want to be violated like any more than I already was. And they were like, well, if you want to have a sure conviction, you need to do this. And so I was like, okay, you know, I understand. So they did the fingernail test, which, you know, I had skin from him under my fingernails from probably scratching and pushing back. They did the rape kit test. They inspected everything, and that was super fucking uncomfortable. Then they gave me a change of clothes and told me I could take a shower and everything like that. But for an entire day, I wasn't allowed to shower or like do anything because they had to investigate and take samples and all this stuff. And so after that, I had went to that halfway house with that girl, Jessica, who was running it. And she was like very, very nice to me. And she's like, listen, like they've got charges on him. Like, you know, there was other women involved. Like they had found, by the way, like 4 other girls that were in these hotel rooms that were drugged up. He had taken their IDs too, and he was keeping them there. And so they had found other women locked up at the same time that I was, just not in the same room. And I had no idea because I was, you know, I had no idea. And so the lady was like, look at all these charges. And like, she showed me like the rap sheet. It was pretty long. Like it was, you know, they had them for like rape, sodomy, sexual assault, sexual battery, attempted kidnapping, and trafficking. Like they had all these charges down. And she was like, for sure, something's going to happen. And like, I didn't understand why she kept saying that. Like she kept guaranteeing me that he was going to be convicted. And like in my head, I was like, why the fuck? Like, why is this not like us? Like, you know, like I didn't understand that like these people don't get convicted that much. Like I really didn't get how the system worked. And I thought that like, you know, you do a crime to somebody, there's the victim of that crime. If they're caught and they're found guilty, then they get in trouble for that. But that's not how it works with human trafficking down here. It doesn't work that way. And so I had a really rude wake-up call when I also spoke to a detective named Patrick, and he was probably the nicest cop I've ever spoken to in my entire life. He was on the human trafficking department, I guess, and he was dressed in regular clothes, you know, but he had his badge. And he had a notebook, and he had like another book, and he was like, all right, like, tell me what happened. And so I had to go through the entire thing all over again. And it was like re-traumatizing myself. It's like I was barely getting through it the first time. but he sat there and like he gave me tissues, and he would like he allowed Jessica to come in and like rub my back while I was talking to him, and it made it a lot easier than like the first time I did it. And so he had the entire thing written down, and he looked at me and he's like, "You are so lucky that you're alive." And I was like, "Well, yeah, I didn't think I was going to make it out alive." And he's like, "No, like you are so lucky. Like this is an open book, or like something like a clear case of human trafficking," he said. And he's like, most of these people, like they don't make it out alive. Like they'll either get sucked into the system and they eventually die, or they'll kill them, or you don't know what would have happened to you. So the fact that like you are still sitting here and able to tell this, like, that's enough. And so he had written everything down, and I still had his number for years afterwards. And he was like, "All right, no, we just have to wait, for court." And I'm like, "Okay." And he said, he's in jail now. And I think he bonded out though. But he had a bail, which was at like, I think it was at like $1 million. I'll have to go back and look at the record, but it was a lot of money. He bailed out. And they were supposed to notify you, notify the victim immediately, like when they get out of jail. They never did that. And they also didn't ask me to come to court to testify. I thought that I was going to be testifying, but I also lived in a different state. So like I ended up, obviously I flew home after everything like that happened. But I was still in contact with the people. Like I was talking to the police officers, like they were asking me all these questions, like I would always answer them, and I would always, give them whatever they wanted. And then court came, and I didn't know the date. They didn't tell me the date. They didn't even ask me to testify. They didn't send me a subpoena form. They didn't do anything. And the next thing I heard was, "I'm sorry, but your case didn't have a conviction, or we couldn't have a conviction because you had insufficient evidence, and that wasn't enough to convict him of human trafficking," even though he had 4 other fucking people in a different room and he was keeping them there. Even though he had my ID, their ID, the rape kit test should have done enough. You should have been able to tell from that. None of that mattered, and it was completely thrown out. And I called the detective, Patrick, and I was crying my eyes out because I'm like, how the fuck did this happen? Now I'm terrified. Now, you go to the police on somebody like that, you don't know if they're going to go kill you afterwards. So, like, I was literally, like, in fear. Like, I thought I was going to die. I changed my number. I till this day, I still do not have anything in my name. My phone is still not in my name. You won't find my name anywhere on the internet unless it's my Facebook or social media. Like, that's literally how bad it was. Like, I could not believe that they allowed this guy to get away with that. And I called him and I was crying, and he was like, yeah, he understood. He's like, "I don't know what the fuck happened. Like, I'm so sorry. Like, I wasn't really on the case. Like, I was just taking extra notes and going through it. But he must have paid the prosecutor off. Like, that's the only thing I can think of." And he was like, he's probably, because he had a lot of money because he bailed out. So he clearly had the money to pay for that. And if they paid the prosecutor off, then obviously she can attack me and his lawyers, whoever the hell they were. I never even got a day in court. They got him out, and the case was dropped. And just like that, they were, "Sorry, no, good luck." And that was literally it. They didn't offer any services. They didn't offer shit. And so I was basically like left after that to, deal with everything, and just kind of like, I don't even know. It was just trying to get through it. Like, every single day was like just trying to get through the day because I didn't know what the fuck was going to happen, and I just could not believe like that the system is that fucking flawed. And even now it's the same way. These people do not get convicted. Like in Florida, I think they only get like 1 or 2 people a year and convict them of this. Like all this fucking money that we're paying, for the military industrial complex, or all this money that's going, to lobbyists and all this other shit. Like, why don't we have people that are actually working and wanting to get rid of trafficking? Like, why do they not care about that? And so that's like really after I went through all of the healing process, I guess you could say, like, I don't know, like I basically just had to deal with it, and I got really, really angry. And like I got really angry to the point where it was like, like I wouldn't mind getting in a fight on a Wednesday night because that's how mad I was. Like I was just so hurt that it turned to anger. Like when I couldn't cry anymore, I was mad. And when I was mad, you just didn't want to be around me because I was literally just an asshole to like everybody. And, it sent me down like a really, really, really bad path. And, like I had like a few problems before this happened. And when that happened, that just completely threw me down like one of the worst paths that I've ever taken. And I didn't care if I lived or not, like, and it wasn't just that, like, it was just thing, like the way that the state handled it, the way that these people are out there literally fucking harming people and they don't get in trouble. But like, say I get caught with like drugs, and I'm harming myself, I go to jail, So it didn't make sense to me. Like people are selling weed and they're going to prison for like fucking, decades, especially if they were black, and they were locking these men up like nothing and throwing away the key. But yet when it comes to that, these people can have child porn, they can have fucking, these sick little fucking fantasies, and they talk about it on the internet with their friends openly. Social media doesn't censor that. The cops don't take that seriously. If you get caught with like child porn in some states, you can literally get probation still till this day. And if you get caught trafficking people, I think the fine and the amount of time that you do in jail is less than if you were caught selling drugs. Like, especially if it was like ecstasy or like one of those like drugs, like, well, maybe not where you are, but here, a lot of them are still illegal. So like you would go to jail for a long fucking time, but that they don't do anything. They literally get away with it. The jail time is completely bullshit. And that's basically where I started getting angry, went down a really, really, really bad path.
Another thing I remember you telling me that you kind of felt like maybe the cops had some involvement, like maybe that they were clients or something. You want to tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, I was, like I said, I was like really fucking pissed off about it. And, I started doing some research, and see what I didn't notice at the time, which, when you always like look back, it's always 2020 in hindsight, but I didn't see it at the time. But when they did arrest him, it was kind of like they knew his name, which was strange to me. Like I should have thought about that before, like at the time, but I didn't. But they knew his name. They basically gave him like a slap on the wrist, and like he paid a huge fine, and that was it. And when I started like looking into it, it's kind of like they know that this goes on, but like they can get paid off to keep their mouth shut or not investigate them. And this was happening in New Jersey as well, in Camden, New Jersey, before they fired their entire police force, like, which they actually did that. They only kept like maybe like a quarter of the people. They fired their entire police force. And the reason was because they were so freaking corrupt. Like I witnessed like myself, like because I worked in Camden, and I lived there for a little bit, and I would walk, and I would see these cops, and up in New Jersey, the way that Camden's set up, it's like, everything is like a block, and it's like the blocks aren't big. It's a city. It's a small city. It's literally like Philadelphia, but it's just in Jersey over the bridge. And so I would see these cops, and they would go to different sets, because that's what they would call them, or sets where they sold the drugs and, whatever else they sold. The cops would go to different sets, and like some of these people, because it was a legitimate business, like illegitimate, but I mean, it was ran like a legitimate business. You would have people up at the top, then you would have the people underneath them, and then you'd have those people that are dispersing the drugs to the young kids who were literally like, they could be anywhere from 8 to 16 years old, maybe a little older. And then you had the clients that would come and buy them. So every time, and the kids that were selling them, they had them under 18 for that reason, that if they ever got caught, they would just get ROR'd, or they'd go to juvie, like they wouldn't actually go to prison, and they're not going to tell because they're terrified. And plus that's like, their code, like they don't tell. So it's like, they didn't care. Like it was very difficult to get to the top people, because it was ran, kind of like a triangle, like with all these people on the bottom that are totally replaceable at any moment. You could shut down a block for 5 minutes, and as soon as those little kids go to jail, then you have 10 more kids that are going to come and take their spot. So it was a never ending, it was like a McDonald's drive-through actually for drugs. So it's like the only way I can really put it. And the cops would literally come to those certain streets, and the kids would be like, no, like, we don't feel like getting raided. Like, here's money, go harass, 7th and York, or like go harass like 3rd and, Mount Vernon. Like they would literally just pay these cops off. And so the cops would then take the money, and they would do literally what they would go to the other block and harass that block. And this way, like those kids made out, they lost a little bit of money, but they didn't get arrested. And then they were actually taking down competition for them. So the cops were like pawns, but they knew it. And so they totally used that to their advantage. And it reminds me of like Training Day, that movie, like that actually happens. Like, like they literally do that. Like they get involved. A lot of these cops are picking girls up on the street. They're having sex with them. They're paying them, and or if they don't pay them, they're threatening them that, we're going to, if you don't do this, then we're taking you to jail right now. And 9 times out of 10, these girls are dope sick, and they don't want to go to jail because they'd rather get high. And so they'll do whatever they say, and then the cops will leave. And so that is my experience with the police officers. Like I see them through a lens that like most people wouldn't. Like I see them where they're just completely exploitative. They don't care about justice. They're literally all about money. And, obviously in Camden, they completely fired half of them, more than half, like 3/4 of their force. They just fired them all. And then they brought in the Metro Police Department, which Obama had a huge part in, because he was basically using Camden as a pilot test city for the rest of the country. They have cameras in Camden, New Jersey on every single block. If you walk down it, you're looking up and you're looking at a camera. And I think Vice actually did a piece on it, and they said, well, is that a police state? And the chief, Scott Thompson, literally said, well, no, we're just, it's not a police state. The residents are so happy that we have these cameras. Like, who the hell says that? Because I'm pretty sure, like, nobody that I know is happy that they have a camera on every single block, literally opening their door and seeing a camera. Like, I don't think anybody really likes that, And that was like a test pilot with Obama to, quote, demilitarize, even though they didn't demilitarize them at all. They actually looked worse, and de-escalate situations. And so they would take the cops, and like they would, like see somebody walking down the street with like a knife or like a gun, and they would have to de-escalate the situation before they actually approached them. So they didn't just like, shoot them or like tumble them to the ground or do whatever they do. Like, it didn't really work out, but they're saying that Camden is the model that they want to follow for defunding the police. Like, give me a break. Like, all you're making is a police state, and that's basically it. Like half of these people are still corrupt. They're still getting, girls that are vulnerable on the streets. They're still robbing people. Like, they're just a big gang, So like what? I only met like one or two cops in Camden that were actually nice and that were actually decent that helped me. Other than that, like they were just as corrupt as anybody else, you know? Um, so they're totally not innocent. And they're also, they know about human trafficking and they don't, I think it's because they're involved in it. Like I said, when you see them picking up girls on the street and going to different alleyways or different corners and doing what they do and then leaving them and threatening them that they're not going to, you know, that they're going to throw them in jail if they don't do this. I mean, you begin to wonder, like, well, how, you know, like, how many people above you knows that this is going on? Because I'm pretty sure people have spoken out about this and they've gotten nowhere. So why is that? You know, like, why is that? And the more that I researched into this and the more I looked into this, the more I talked to other people. And the other people were then telling me that it's the same in their city. Like the girls, you know, there's a ton of websites that exploit women that are on the streets. And they take these girls and they take pictures of them and they put them on the internet and they put their names out there. And it's like a forum for these men. And if you just read through some of the forums, they're disgusting. But I mean, if you read through some of them, you begin to understand that the cops are more or less complacent and they're also okay with it in a sense because, you know, it brings a lot of money to them. Every time they get, you know, a guy arrested for trafficking or prostitution, they can literally just tell him to pay. That's money for them and the city. And so they don't actually address the problem. They're kind of just, you know, going with this cycle that doesn't help anybody except for them, really, them in the city. That's about it. And the guys, because they can keep doing it, you know?
Yeah. And so in your situation, you know, just the apathy or just the way the cops reacted when they came on the scene. And didn't you say that they were, I remember you mentioned, correct me if I'm wrong, that like some of the cops were, it sounded like they knew this, like they knew each other or something. Is that,
Yeah.
am I remembering that correctly?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like they literally knew his name, you know? And it made me think like, well, how many times have you arrested this guy? Or like, how do you know this guy, you know? And it just, so many like unanswered questions that I have, you know? Like they didn't, and the other detective was like basically telling me that he thinks it's because he paid them off. And that, like I said, that would not surprise me because of what I've seen in other places and how they do it. And so it's really, it's one thing to be completely taken advantage of by another person and then, you know, have to deal with that. And then trying to go to the correct, you know, trying to go through the correct system and the authorities and get something done about it, to learn that they don't really give a shit. And it's not all of them. I'm not like accusing all cops, but like, I mean, something is wrong within these departments when this stuff is happening and nobody's saying anything about it and nothing's getting done and things aren't changing, you know? And I just, it's very, it's even worse for me, honestly, to get screwed over by the system because, you know, that's something that, you know, people have faith in and they think that it'll work and they think that, you know, like this is America and, you know, land of the free, like, which we're not. And, you know, we have justice and which we don't, you know, it's just like, because that was a long time ago. Like I really thought that he would be in jail and something would happen and these other girls, you know, wouldn't have to go through this and they never popped him up. And so, yeah, that's how I feel about that. And that's what I mean when they talked to him, like they knew who he was and they still didn't do anything about it. And it was almost like, it was weird. It was like, almost like they had like a relationship, you know? And, but they, of course they didn't admit that or anything, but like looking back at it now, it's kind of weird how they just knew his name and the way it happened, you know, and the other detective telling me that he paid them off. Like, you know what I mean? It's just crazy.
Yeah.
That this is even happening.
Well, one of the things that impresses me about you is, you know, you've gone through all this, and you're not just taking it sitting down. And I know that you do a lot of activism. You go out and talk to So there's a couple things I'd love to talk to you about. One is you worked with some different organizations, and then you said that kind of wasn't working out, so you kind of went on your own. And you want to just tell me a little bit about that, like, maybe some of the different organizations that are out there, because a lot of my focus has been on the nonprofit industrial complex. So you want to just you took this experience and then you wanted to do something about it.
Yeah, so I decided after I was at that lady Jessica's house, the one that helped me and prepped me, I guess, for like the trial that never happened but was supposed to happen, the one that ran the halfway house. I noticed after that, like, that's what I wanted to do. Like, I wanted to help other people, and I wanted to help them get through things and overcome it. And so I was talking, well, I'm friends with this one lady, Brenda, in Camden, and she has an organization called Seeds of Hope. Now, she's like a real nonprofit that's not fucked up, that's not, she's on the streets every day, giving these girls food, giving them water, giving them essentials, giving them, whatever it is, clothing, whatever they need, she's there doing that. And the reason for that is because she was also an addict and she was also on the streets, so she knows what it's like to go through that, and she wanted to actually help them. So that's an example of a good nonprofit, and I worked with them for a while, and they're in New Jersey, in Camden. But down here, so I went to, I don't know if I should say the name because I don't want to get like in trouble for it, but there's an organization down here. And I went to them and I said, listen, because most of the people that were there, I had asked them, like, have you ever gone through this? And they were pretty much like, no, they haven't. So I was like, okay, well, I have, and I think that I could give you a new perspective and help you figure this out and try to explain to you where most of the problems occur. Because it's not like the movie Taken. Like, everybody thinks like, it's like the movie Taken where they just, like, my story was not, it's not how it usually happens. And like, that's, I've been through a lot besides that, because like I said, it put me on like a really bad path after that. And I completely, was in the streets and I was homeless. And so I've seen everything at that point. Really, I've seen how they do it on the street and how they recruit girls out there. I've had to escape certain situations with other guys, like, that would try to pick girls up, that are violent, they literally killing women out there on the streets, and nothing happens because they're a drug addict. Nobody cares about that. And so I went to the organization and I tried to tell them, like, listen, like, you're missing the biggest, the biggest problem. Like, you need to be out there on the streets with these people, and you need to be talking to them, and you need to be, interacting so that you build a relationship, and then you can start to talk to these women and see how the problem's actually happening. Like, you need to go out there, get out of your fucking office, get off your ass, talk to the girls on the street, ask them what's going on. Who cares? Like, if they don't like you, like, just make some type of relationship with them to where you're hearing it from them how this is happening. They didn't want to hear that. They didn't care what the fuck I had to say, to be honest. They were literally just like, oh, okay, whatever. We don't really need your help. It was insane. Like, I couldn't believe it. Like, you would think that, like, these are the companies or the nonprofits that want to help people. They don't even want to go out and do it. They just want to sit back at their computers and not get anything done. Like, you're not getting anything done. You're not accomplishing anything. You're not trying to accomplish anything. And so I must have called like 28 different places down here in my area and all over Florida, basically, but mainly just my area. And I didn't get a call back from any of them. Nobody called me back. Nobody emailed me back. Nobody even answered the phone when I would call. And this is all while Rick Bradshaw is our sheriff still. So, like, I called him. I called his office. I called all of the units that deal with human trafficking, and they gave me like this runaround, like, oh, well, call this office and ask for this person. And I would do that. And then he would tell me, well, you need to call this person at that office. Like, it was just a complete circle that they were sending me in, and I really wasn't getting anywhere. And now that I think about it, like, this is where Epstein occurred. This is where the FBI and the police officers knew that this man was raping children. They knew that he was recruiting them off of the street, who preferably were young girls that were either on drugs or that were too young to be on drugs, but had a really bad home life, who had no parental supervision. They didn't have people looking out for them. They were literally getting off school and they were in a bad area. And that's how he would recruit these girls. And, Rick Bradshaw was the sheriff while all of this was going on. Now, don't you think, after everything with Epstein broke, don't you think that this guy would want to, like, redeem himself and, really get involved and try to make a point to stop human trafficking? He doesn't. It's like he could care less, and I don't understand how people elected for this guy or voted for this guy, because it's like, he was literally there supposedly supervising Epstein while he was out on work release from a deal that Acosta gave him, the prosecutor, I think it was, and they were supposed to supervise him, and he went out and he still raped more kids, and he's still convicted. He was doing more crimes, and that all happened in Palm Beach County under our sheriff, who is still doing absolutely nothing to do anything for trafficking. And I started to get a lot of pushback. We threw a protest 2 years ago, and we had, I don't even know, like 200 people there. And it just so happened that we went on like a day where everybody was at this plant show. So there was like hundreds of people, and perfect, like, I don't care. Like, this is even better because now there's more people here and they're going to have to hear this. And so I had my loudspeaker, and I was, basically I was just telling them, like, what's going on, the statistics of trafficking, which are heartbreaking. In the country, Florida is number 3 for trafficking. Texas is number 2, and California is number 1. And in Florida, Palm Beach County is where a lot of trafficking happens, in Orlando, because of the, the airports, and not only that, but Disney World and where all the other kids gather. They always target those areas. And so, like, we did a protest against that. And I was telling them the statistics, and I started, I started going to county meetings and trying to get involved. And it was almost like I got like pushback from like certain cops that were there. It almost felt like they didn't want me doing anything in that category. Like, they didn't want me speaking out about it. They tried to intimidate me every time I came. I started getting pulled over randomly when we were driving. Just bizarre things that were happening, all for speaking out. And it wasn't just human trafficking I was speaking about either. It was, other issues that they're doing in the county with the sustainability and Agenda 2021 or 2030 and the World Economic Forum and all of that. I was covering everything, and they did not like it. At one point, my mayor told me that I was banned for like 24 hours from even coming back, that I couldn't speak. They would cut me off. They would threaten to arrest me. It was just insane, And I'm just like, why? Like, don't you... To think that these people are going to do anything with the Maxwell case, to me, just doesn't sound logical, because everything I've seen and everything I've went through, it doesn't look like any of them care that much about trafficking. So, yeah, that's pretty much what happened with that. My experience anyway.
Yeah. And so I've seen some of your, testimony where you've gone up there and at least let your voice be heard, which is really great. And if more people would do that.
You guys don't care about the people. You don't care about our health. You don't care about the environment. All you guys care about is the corporations that give you a paycheck. That's it. And I'm sick of it. Change.
Thank you for your comments.
And so now you're also going out and talking to girls out on the street and trying to give them some support just on your own, right?
Yeah, I do that by myself. I don't go with any organization. I don't get paid to do any of it. I'll give them clothes. I'll go out there and talk to them. I'll give them water, like I almost got arrested one time because I had a bunch of clothes in my back seat and I let a girl inside and she was going through them and the cop literally pulled me over and was like, "What are you doing?" "Well, maybe if you weren't a crackhead, you could have some clothes." And I just looked at the guy and I was like, "Are you like, really? Are you fucking serious? Like, leave. You know what I mean? Like, we're not doing anything illegal. I'm literally helping her out. Like, don't you have somebody else to be harassing, But I do that anyway. I still go out there. I still do that. I still talk to people. It's just really sad, to be honest. Like, the crazy thing is I haven't actually seen that many girls lately on the streets. I don't know why. Like, I don't know if it's because of the pandemic. Like, it really didn't affect it that much. Guys didn't care about the coronavirus that much when it came to picking up girls on the street. Like, I've seen them literally, like, with their masks on, pulling over to pick up a girl. And I'm just like, are you fucking retarded? Like, it's hilarious. Like, I literally, it's pretty fucking ridiculous. But, yeah, like
Wow.
I think they're all working now in a house somewhere, and I've yet to find it because I really don't see them on the street as much. But I have seen homeless people that are, like literally going through a lot due to the pandemic and everything like that happening. But they're also the other reason why I think I haven't seen the girls is because traffickers and pimps and whatever you want to call them, they're now going through the internet. And they're going through Instagram. They're going through Facebook. They're going through any Xbox, like whatever has an internet connection and a kid's there, they will go through it to get to your kid. Literally, my good friend Memory Hold, that's what he goes by, is Memory Hold. He does a lot of research, like I do, into the trafficking online and how kids are being exploited. And what he found was just it was unbelievable. They're using certain codes and like certain words and hashtags, and it's working like kind of like algorithmic glue, I guess you could say. Like they'll type something in and it's like an SR, I don't know how to explain it, but he explains it a lot better. And so they're using like these certain words and hashtags, and it's literally linking to trafficking and child porn and exploiting kids that way. And so they're going through different social media platforms like Instagram, Facebook. Instagram's a big one. And unfortunately, a lot of the moms are actually involved in selling their own children to these people. And it's disgusting. But yeah, so that's a whole different topic. But yeah, so that's basically, I would go out there and help and be there firsthand and not, behind a desk. I didn't do any of that. Like I literally just went out there and talked to them and stood out there with them, and gave them clothes. And I've done a lot like that. I think you can help people more doing it that way than just sitting behind a desk,
Yeah, I've seen individuals do way more than large, well-funded organizations. You have one individual who actually cares, will often be more successful and will actually accomplish a lot more than these big bloated organizations. It's really It's really sad that's the case, but it is. And also you mentioned, like the stigma around, like, so someone is on the streets and someone maybe is addicted to drugs, and then they're treated like a piece of shit, like they're not a human being, and somehow that justifies anything that happens to them, and they're responsible for like their own situation, and fuck them. And I think that's a real problem, like There was a there was a protest. We were in Cleveland. This is like a little, maybe about 10 years ago. We were in Cleveland. There was a protest where there was this serial killer had killed all these women, and there was actually people that were reporting like real evidence to the police, and the police were ignoring it because the women he was killing were prostitutes and were drug addicts, and so like they just didn't matter. And this guy got away with it for a long time because these are just throwaway people in society.
Exactly. By the way, I think you're talking about Anthony Sowell in Cleveland, the guy that was raping a bunch of women and burying them and doing all types of crazy shit. But you're right, they didn't do anything because of the victims and they were drug addicts, which
Right.
is crazy. I actually know somebody who was involved in that case, and so that's why I remembered it. But
I'll send you the video. We did a big march, and it was bizarre because
really,
like. Yeah, we did a big we did a big march. We started at the house where it happened, and we had the family members
Oh,
out
wow.
there, but it was like the cops were there, and like we were protesting the cops, but they were like following along with us in their cop cars. It was a strange situation. I have video of it somewhere. I'll have to send it to you. It's
We stand here in solidarity with the neighbors of this community and with the families who have lost their loved ones. Being a poor woman coming from North Philadelphia, where just 2 days ago another woman was murdered in our neighborhood, we too know that to be poor in America means to not matter. It means to not have the same kinds of investigations. It means to not have the same numbers of people looking into the cases. It means writing people off as having drug addictions or being involved in prostitution. It means to be written off like we don't matter. And I think it's time that we call for an end to this because poor women, and particularly poor women of color, matter in this country. Is that right?
Right on.
I am Tonia Carmichael.
I am Tonia Carmichael.
I am Crystal Dozier.
I am Crystal Dozier.
I am Janice Webb.
I am Janice Webb.
No truth, no justice, no peace.
No truth, no justice, no peace. I am the people.
I am Nancy Cobbs.
I am Nancy Cobbs.
I am Tyshana Carver.
I am Tashana Carver.
I am Amelda Hunter.
I am Amelda Hunter.
I am the people.
I am the people.
I am the people.
You've also spoken out about helping to raise awareness about some of the stuff that Allison has been working on around the Fourth Industrial Revolution and the digitization of life and putting everyone on the blockchain. And I think that ties in, like you said, with the trafficking, because you have children on their laptops or on their computers who can be victimized, who are targeted. And I don't know if you saw this, there's a spat going on with this guy named Derek Brose who runs the Conscious Resistance or whatever, but he's like openly, actively promoting like children are sovereign and should be allowed to, have like their blockchain identity online, and not understanding, the problems with that mentality. But it would be interesting to see more research done on actually connecting how that actually happens, how they find kids online and can target them,
Yeah, so with Derek Brose, all I can say is like, I understand somebody's perspective on, wanting to help people get their own money, but I also understand that traffickers and people are exploiting those systems every single day, and it's not like they have total control. I don't think anything is like truly decentralized, so that's like with the crypto, I don't know too much about it to speak on it like that, but to say that kids are like sovereign, like the problem with that is like they can get taken advantage of so easily doing that, you know, like so fucking easily. And it just ties back into like the trafficking aspect with, you know, being online with these kids. Like I said, they're literally going through Instagram, they're going through Telegram, a lot of this happens on social media platforms. And then from there, they're putting it onto another platform like Telegram, where they're sending all of, you know, the nudes of the children and just, you know, disgusting shit like that is going on to Telegram or another, like Meta, I think was another one, not Facebook Meta, but it was like another type of downloading platform. And so, you know, these kids, like, and a lot of the parents don't know, with the digital thing, you know, like, besides taking our biometrics and doing all of that, the pedophiles are also taking images off of Instagram of your own child and then downloading it and sending it to all of their friends. Like, it's kind of creepy when you think about it, like how many children are online right now that are in the hands of some other, you know, serial killer, pedophile, like rapist, like, I don't know, like somebody crazy has those pictures. And the sad thing is, you know, crypto will be like I think crypto will be a big part in that as well. Like, they'll be able to pay for certain things like that. It's just with the crypto thing, like, I don't even know what to believe, like not what to believe, but what side to take, because it really doesn't seem like a great idea. Once you see the digital ID and once you see everything that Allison was pointing out and everything that she has showed, it's like, how are you okay with the fact that the military created and ran this? Like, do you really believe that you guys are going to have control? Like, I feel like crypto is the bait that will get these people into it. Like, does that make sense? Like,
Yeah, totally.
like, it baits them onto, you know, like these things with the digital IDs and being okay with that. Like, I don't agree with that at all.
When it shares a lot of the same characteristics, they say, "Oh, well, ours is different. Ours is better," but you're still creating an ID that's tracking the child or whatever, and it is
exactly.
on. You know, you are putting that onto blockchain. There is data collection. There is monitoring. And then you're creating behavioral economics around, you know, the tokenization of like, do this or do that. Like, maybe it's just playing a game at first, but you're still you know, leading people down this path. And I think that the whole like children are sovereign idea, I think there's an effort to kind of promote that idea. Even the World Economic Forum put out a video where it was like, oh, in 2050 or whatever, children will be have the right to vote. You know, it's like, what? You know, it's like, and I think that like the pedophiles, you know, do want to kind of promote that idea that you know, children, you know, can consent to things that they shouldn't be, you know, they can't consent to. Like a child, you know, it's to me, it's just crazy. But there's a lot of there's a lot of people that are good intentioned that like think that this can be a positive thing. And, you know, I strongly disagree. I think that we need to be going in the other direction. We need to like de-digitize our lives. We need to, you know, we need less technology in our lives and less data collection and tracking and monitoring. I mean, I don't think that is, you know, the solution.
I don't think so either. Like, how many studies have, you know, I mean, just with education, you know, you're taking a kid out of a classroom, or, you know, basically not everybody homeschooled. So a lot of people were in schools. You're taking them out of that environment with other children, with the teachers, with, you know, without the stupid mask. Like, you're interacting, you're learning, and now you're putting them on a screen 8 hours, however many hours a day, with God knows how their home life is, if they ate today, if they're going to be able to pay attention, what kind of disabilities do they have, and you're making them do all the work through a computer. And at the same time, like the people like Bill Gates and the big, you know, Bloomberg and all these other people that are really rich, like, they know that this is basically a test, and it's being tested on these children who are mainly lower class or middle class, and their kids aren't having that happen to them. Like, and at the same time, they're collecting all of their data, they're extracting everything, they're getting their behavior algorithm, they're feeding the AI, they're trafficking the data of these children and feeding it to the AI. I mean, to even suggest that children should be having their own sovereign identities online, it just sounds bizarre. Like, knowing what these other pedophiles are capable of is, taking, getting to the kids and getting access to those children. Like, do you really think the kids know how to create a VPN or how to, I don't think, you know what I'm saying? It just sounds ridiculous. And it just reminds me the one thing you were saying before about normalizing it. It reminds me of when all the people were on 4chan and somebody was trolling and they were the map community, which is minor attracted person, and they're creating awareness for the maps. It was a total troll. It was a joke. And some freaking idiot, some weirdo, literally took it seriously and started posting all over Twitter and all these disgusting platforms. Hold on, my battery's running low. Can I go grab my charger real fast?
Go for it. So a lot of people can't be bothered with it, and maybe don't care, or it's too much of a hassle. What is it about you? Is it mainly just your personal experiences and having gone through what you went through that makes you such a fighter?
I don't know. It's crazy because for a long time, I really didn't know, what I wanted to actually do, with my life. And I had an idea, but I didn't actually know. And so when all of that happened to me, I think it kind of just made me a lot more aware of how everything works, the system, the government, education, everything. It was I had to unlearn everything I did know and relearn everything else. And I feel people get stuck on that part. It's hard for them to get to part from their own belief systems and look at another point of view. It's they have these beliefs and they have their own thoughts, and they can't get past that. It's if that doesn't fit their worldview, then they want nothing to do with it, And so in order to I think in order to move past that and get people to actually care, I feel either something's got to happen, to make them want to care. Because that was what happened to me. After all of that happened to me and I went through all that and I realized, I can't rely on any of these people. Everything is flawed. It made me want to do something about it. And then when I came across, I've been involved in the trafficking issue now for years. It feels it has been years, but I'm saying it feels a lot longer because of how much it's happening and how much worse it's gotten since the pandemic. It has gotten a lot worse on the internet, the way that they're going in and trafficking these children. My friend Memory Hold, I said, he documents all of it, and it's incredible the way that they have figured out that they can get to the kids. And another thing that Allison was saying would happen with the VR headsets and everything like that. Well, a lot of these kids are using these, and the parents don't realize that this is connecting to the internet, and anybody can come through that. So now they can see into the kid's home. They can, walk me to your bedroom, or walk me to this, walk me to your front door, and then they can look at the address. I mean, it's really bad. And I don't think people are having these discussions, and they're just allowing it to happen. And I think that it's kind of talking to my dad sometimes. When I try to talk to him about it, it seems he gets really not frustrated or annoyed, but he's just okay, tell me later, I don't want to hear it right now. And I feel that's how a lot of people are, until something happens to them to make them want to care. It almost feels they're just going to ignore it. Or if it goes against their own worldviews or beliefs, it's well, I don't know. It's just really, it's a crazy time right now that we're living in. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
I think what's different about me is I wanted to know, I wanted to know everything that was going on. I wanted to read it. I wanted to be equipped to know, what I'm dealing with. Like, you can't fight something if you don't know what you're dealing with, and some of the parents that I speak to, that have their kids in schools and, or they're homeschooling and they want to go to these, parent meetings with the school board, which, that's been a total mess lately. And they want to know how to, fight this or address them. And they're not really addressing them on anything that's happening. They're always going into their own political belief systems. And they're saying, well, we don't want the masks and we don't want the vaccine, but that's all they're addressing. It's like health freedom and that's it. And for me, I'm like, that's not it, because just because they banned vaccine passports in Florida doesn't mean that we're not going to have a digital ID, because we already have one, but we're already setting the system up to make one. So at the same time, they're giving billions for the infrastructure to be built. They are putting cameras up everywhere. They are eliminating the FSA test. And now they're doing like all data. They're basically collecting all of the data all the time and measuring it incrementally for impact. So all of these things are happening, and it seems like the parents are kind of like stuck in their own little political bias and only addressing a certain thing or a few things. And I see that a lot with the health freedom movement. They do the same thing. It's really, it's frustrating.
Yeah, it's frustrating for me as well, because and I support the cause, of like, yes, fight the mandates, yes, fight the, fight for health freedom and choice and all that, but it doesn't begin and end there. Like, there's something going on that's so much bigger that there's only a handful of people that are really addressing it right now, which is really kind of crazy. And you've been one of those people, and I'm really grateful for you putting your voice and your throwing your hat out there and speaking your mind, both online and even going out to protests and city council meetings, and thank you for all of your work.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you chatting with me today. Let's maybe we'll do this again sometime. Any parting words?
That'd be awesome. I would just, if you're a parent, and you have children, watch what they do online, and be aware of the apps that they can download, like Snapchat, Instagram. Obviously they're all the obvious ones, but even the apps that are smaller that you don't know about, like, look at everything they're downloading on their phones, because you don't want to not know, your kid, you come home one day and your child's not there and you don't know. It's always good to know what's on their cell phones, because that's what they're doing now, is a majority of it goes through their phones. So if I was a parent, I would want to know that, and I would want to, like, whatever they have on if my kid had a phone, I would know everything that's on it, but other than that, like, I just appreciate everything that you've done, that Allison has done, that everybody, in this group has done, because if I didn't run into your channel, I wouldn't even be sitting here, so it's kind of awesome.
That's great. Yeah, it's kind of amazing, because like parents are basically just letting the technology raise their children, and I get it.
Yeah.
People are busy, and it's really difficult, and also the kid wants it, and they've got all their friends have it and all of that, but it's kind of incredible. I mean, even beyond just the overt like sexual predators online, there's the corporate predators, like even the corporations that are trying to sell your kid whatever bullshit, sugary drink or whatever the hell, which has been with us for a long time. But, it used to be in other countries, it was actually illegal to advertise to children. And now it's just a complete free for all. Like they're tracking and tracing and monitoring your child, their behavior, their habits, and they're using psychological techniques to basically, mind control your kid, even if it's just to buy a product. It's so unethical. It's so wrong. And like, our society has accepted this as just being like okay and normal. It's kind of crazy. Like I always thought, like, if I had a kid, I don't know what I would do. It would be very difficult because I would want to protect my kid from that. Like I wouldn't want to buy my kid a tablet or a cell phone, but that would create problems because then they're like, they go to school and all their friends have it, and I don't have it. And I can't imagine trying to raise a kid nowadays. Like how does a parent compete with the corporations,
Like if I had kids, I would be like living in the middle of nowhere. Like, like I wouldn't have technology. Like I wouldn't let them have a TV. Like I would probably be like, Remus, get off. I'm sorry. I would be.
He wants to be famous.
I know.
That cat is so cute. How much does that cat weigh? Do you know? It's so big.
I don't even know. Like probably like 8 or 9 pounds.
Yeah,
I don't know. I haven't weighed him in forever, but he's so big compared to me, though. It's funny.
Yeah.
Like I said, like if I had a kid, I wouldn't have them on any social media. I would delete my social media. I would be like such a crazy parent. Like I don't know if they'd hate me or they'd love it. Like it wouldn't be in between. Like I'm pretty sure they'd like hate me for it, or they'd be like, "Oh, thank you so much," because I wouldn't, just knowing what I know, I wouldn't let them travel the internet like that. And it's just crazy because like there was a documentary that I actually spoke to the one lady who did it. She pretended that she had an app change her facial structure and it made her look like a child. And so she went online and and I've done the same thing. Like I've actually gone in to try to catch these people by changing my appearance or like using photographs of me from when I was younger. And it's immediate. The second that you enter like a kid's chat room, a Facebook profile, Instagram, and you put these pictures up there, it's immediate. The response that you get from these like pedophiles, like they will literally start pouring in. And like all you have to do is just post like, hey, I'm, Amanda, and I'm 13 years old and I just want to have fun, or something stupid. Like you would be shocked at how fast these people just pour in and just go after. It's disgusting. And like, that happens so much, and parents don't even know that it's going on. Like it's bizarre. And like my friends that research it, the modeling agencies were another thing that were really big. Like Jeffrey Epstein, Trump was also very invested in these modeling agencies. And what they would do is they'd get these girls, they'd get those girls to recruit the other girls, and they'd bring them in, and traffic them. But they were using modeling agencies to do it. And my one friend, Memory Hole, I've mentioned him, but he researches this part. And so he would go into the modeling agencies and he'd actually research, who they are, what they're doing, and look at the girls that they had on there. And a couple of them ended up going down because they were actually trafficking children. It's so, there's so many layers to it, and it goes so deep, but it all starts through the internet and being connected. Social media companies are totally aware of it. They are more than aware. They've had, their content creators that are like, some of the content creators they host actively speak out about this, and they bring it to, their viewers' awareness, and YouTube will actually strike their channel. They will literally take their videos down. And why? You're exposing predators. Like you would think that a company like YouTube would want to know that stuff's happening so they could take care of it, but they don't. And that was another case that happened with this one girl, Jessica. She was basically, 13 years old, I think it was, met a guy in a chat room online, told her to leave and pack her stuff. And she was upset because she had just gotten like a bad grade or something, and she was afraid her parents would get upset. So she left her house with this guy, and ended up like going with him, and he trafficked her for like a couple of years, I think it was. And when her mom tried to fight, she took this all the way to court. Like she was taking these companies like Google, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, like she was taking these companies to court and saying that, like something has got to change with the laws. And, you people are aware of this, then you need to fix it and do something about it. And you know what the excuse that Google used was? It was their First Amendment rights to put, preference, like to basically summon children and like upload their feelings and their thoughts and their pedophilic garbage, that was their First Amendment rights. And that's what Google used as a defense for that. And to me, that's just a slap in the face, because we get censored, we get taken off the internet for literally nothing, and yet they can use that for, like, it just blows my mind.
Double standard.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's
totally
incredible. Well, and if you think about it, these tech companies are kind of doing something similar. I mean, they've got your camera on and they're watching. They may have a different. They're not sexual predators per se, but they're predators. They're the data collection, and they're mining children for data, and that's also predatory. And I think that we need to start looking at it that way.
Definitely. They're influencing the kids, and from influencing the kids, they know the kids will go influence their parents, and then they'll end up buying whatever, on a consumer level. Like, it's just totally ridiculous. Like, it's gotten so out of hand with the data collections. And look at what they did with the last election with the Trump thing, back then, with Cambridge. They were literally targeting groups of people to make them vote a certain way. The capability they have, right. I think France was like the only country that was like, no, get the hell out of here. We're not going to do this. Like, France was the only one, I think it was, that said no. Yeah. And this still happens today. Like, how many ads did they send to parents and families and neighbors and friends, like, that Joe Biden was like, he is completely out of touch and he probably is losing his mind. But like, how many doctored videos did they show of him? How many deep fakes are there on the internet now? And this is all happening through data collection, So even if you think it doesn't affect you, it still does, It's just, even at the smallest level, it will.
Yeah. Well, back to nature.
Yeah, right? Literally.
There's so many toxins. They're spraying shit in the air. They're putting shit in our food. They put shit in our water. We're getting hit at like all angles. Yeah, we're being assaulted like massively.
Yeah.
And everybody just goes along with it. That's kind of amazing.
That's like the craziest thing to me is like people don't even fucking care. Right. Like, they don't even fucking care. Like, even my mom, like, she cares, but she doesn't care. You know what I mean? It's like every time I talk to her, like, I feel like I'm annoying her because she's like, I don't really fucking want to hear it. My dad's like, just shuts me down. He's like, yep, okay, and just moves on. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I was talking to you. He's like, yeah, I don't want to hear about that. It's negative. I'm like,
negative.
Well,
I
it's
hate that.
fucking happening,
Yeah, it's the negative is, to me, the negative is, it's kind of funny. I have a good friend who's got some money, and he's done well, and like he was born comfortable, and he just has this attitude of like, he was watching like the documentaries I was giving him and whatnot, but now he's all into this Abraham Hicks thing. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's like
no,
it's kind of like positive thinking. These people claim they're being channeled by ancient spirits, and then they talk to you, like and you can ask them questions or whatever. But their whole thing is like, it's the whole, what The Secret is? You ever heard of The Secret? It's the law of attraction.
Remember yeah.
So it's like the idea that it's your mind creates your reality. So you just, so you want to think positive things. So like, he's like, oh, that's, I'm like, leave all that negative stuff out. And I'm just like, you're buying products that are, part of this system. Like it's
right.
I don't know. I
think that I really think that ideology is around literally because of capitalism and the whole multi-level marketing or whatever scheme they call it. It's like a fucking pyramid scheme, but they recruit all these people and they're like, think positive. Like, you have to be positive. You're not making money because you're fucking negative. Like, they literally, like, brainwash these people. So then they're like, anything they say, it's fucking negative. Leave me alone. Like, that's what it reminds me of. Like, literally, like, just to, like, use people, you know, and, like, make them pay for all the products, because that's how they're making their money, you know?
Right.
And making them believe that they can do this. Like, it's such bullshit, you know? Like, that's literally what it reminds me of, though.
Yeah. It kind of blows my mind that just how, because he's like, I can't do anything about it. And I'm like, that's not actually true.
That's not true at all.
It's not true at all.
I think that's like the easy thing that they say. Like, I think they just want to say that they can't do anything, so they'll ignore it. Like Allison, like the whole thing with Derek Bros. Like, give me a fucking break. Like, this guy, you know what I mean? Like, he really, you can't say that, I remember you asked me this. I didn't really know what was going on at the time, but like now that I look back at it, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, you can't just like tell people that you want poor kids in these fucking what a particular narrative to say, by the way, in villages that are poor. You don't want to have them begging for money, so you'll put them on like, fuck you. Like, now you're taking advantage of like the gaming community and like trying to brainwash them into believing that, you know, this is good. And then you're getting the poor kids, like the UN wants to do, hooked on these video games, and then they want them to have a psychologist sitting there and fucking taking all of their data. It's like, what the fuck? Like, how is that the only way they can fucking make money?
Yeah.
You know? Like, it's just like, and I used to play video games. Like, I understand, like, I like video games, but like, you can't fucking like use that excuse and tell people that you want freedom, but then you're signing these kids into these fucking deals that the UN wants them to do. Like, that is such bullshit. Like, you're a hypocrite, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know if he's like a useful idiot or if he's just like, you know, working for somebody, but he's a fucking asshole for that, you know?
I tend to think people are more just dumb, you know?
I think it's kind of both. Like,
it's
because sometimes
both.
I'm like, how the fuck do you not know? But then other times I'm like, he really believes in like crypto, and like he really thinks that like they can have like this whole self-sovereign identity thing. Like, that makes me like cringe. Like, I can't. Like, you are not fucking sovereign being on blockchain. Like, what don't they get? This was not built by me. It was built by the fucking military and the CIA.
Absolutely.
Can we not process that, you know? And then it's like they just sign up onto it. And like I like how Allison framed it, though. She said, like, she has, like, you know, RFK for all the other people, and then Derek's over here and Whitney's over here, and they're all kind of taking these people in, which I kind of can see that, you know. When she said it, it made sense. Because RFK, I used to really like him, and that was, like, really upsetting to see.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely, somebody was like, it's a good thing he's going after Fauci. And I'm like, well, it's fine to go after Fauci. You know, Fauci is a crook. But don't do it while you're at the same time supporting the end game of the system, you know?
Yeah.
So
like, what's the point?
Yeah.
Like, he's not even against vaccines. He's for safe vaccines.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
And then when Brandi Vaughn died, Brandi wasn't even a fan of them, by the way. Like, she didn't trust them at all, which I was like, why don't you trust him? Like, and she's like, I don't know. There's something, like, people don't get fame, and they don't get on TV, and they don't get all these things that these people get, which I totally agreed with. But I just figured, oh, well, he's a Kennedy, you know, of course he can get that. Like, maybe he actually wants to do better. That was a joke. But, and then when she died, they literally came in and threatened our friend Tina. And Tina's like a really good person. Like, she's just like me and you. Like, she's not huge or anything, but she's like doing her work and her activism. She completely took over Brandi's stuff. And they threatened her and said, like, you know, we're going to take your GoFundMe that you have for her son, and we're going to basically just like fuck it all up if you don't listen to us and you don't put his name on it. And like, Brandi was like very like particular about, she doesn't want her son involved. She doesn't want his name all over the place. Like, she just wants an investigation if she dies, and she wanted certain things done. So that's what Tina was doing. And RFK came in with Del Bigtree and another guy named Josh, who I fucking hate. they came in and they had an article written about Brandi saying that she had, I think it was like a thyroid issue or something. They lied. They even had a girl come on this video and say that she was talking to Brandi and how she said she was in pain. Like, that's complete bullshit. It never happened. And RFK actually published that fucking article saying that she died from a thyroid problem. Now, if you were really for people and you're really for, you know, good vaccinations or whatever the fuck you call it, like, wouldn't you want the truth being investigated when it comes to her death? Like, instead, he was just doing damage control for, like, Big Pharma, pretty much, you know? Like, it's just that, when he did that, I kind of knew. I was like, this guy's full of shit, you know? Like, you're putting up a false narrative about a person who was an activist that was going against Big Pharma, and now you're trying to cover it up and say that had nothing to do with it, but it was a thyroid issue. Like, that's bullshit, bro. You know, like, we all know how she died. Like, they killed her, you know? Like, just like my friend Mila, who was, like, down here in Florida, she was, like, a huge activist against Monsanto and the mosquitoes and everything, the genetically modified mosquitoes with Bill Gates. She was found dead in the pool in D.C. the day before she was going to hand in over 300,000 signatures to the EPA. Just found dead in a pool, face down. And the pool was only like 4 feet tall. Like, she was like a professional. She was also a very good swimmer, by the way, and won all these competitions. So it was kind of like they just gaslit the whole family. It was like, yeah, she drowned in a pool, even though she can fucking swim, you know, the day before she was going to hand in all these signatures. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
But these people are fucking assholes.
I think, you know, the one way out of it is for people to wake up and to see it for what it is.